So let me hide that. And how do I bring the presentation back up?
Right there.
Oh, here.
And you can X out of your email.
Okay, I think we got it. Okay. I think we're there. Okay, let's do an audio check. Carmela, you can hear us okay?
I can.
Okay, we
Can
can
you
hear
hear
her
me?
fine. We can hear you loud and clear. Awesome.
Perfect.
What time you say when all right, I'll be up.
All right, we are ready. Molly. Hey, Molly. Did you want to do something with these after we go? When do you want to use them? Oh, okay. We're ready.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Pat Scholl. I'm one of the co-chair of our Endeavor group, and I'd like to first initially introduce my boss, President and CEO of Harristown Corporation, and also a board member here at Harrisburg University, Brad Jones. Brad?
Thank you, Pat. Just want to welcome everybody to downtown Harrisburg. How many people are from the Harrisburg region here? I see a lot of old friends here, but good to have you guys in the university. So welcome on behalf of not only Harristown, but on behalf of Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, the first new university to focus on science and technology in over 100 years. Started back in 2001. Now, in a booming number of students here, we've gone from a couple hundred students the first few years to now over 5,000 students from over 75 countries around the world here, both graduate, undergraduate, and actually some new PhD programs as well in data analytics. The university's main complex is right here in this building here at 326 Market. We're thrilled that you're able to be here in the Showcase Auditorium. The university is in the midst of developing a brand new nursing school, and that will be built just around the corner at 3rd and Chestnut, and also accompanied probably by an additional boutique hotel. So that project is in pre-development right now. And you're in the midst of a very historic project here, as many of the students here study things like data analytics, things like computer science, cybersecurity, geospatial imaging, environmental sciences. Its class on the undergrad side is over 50% female and over 50% minority. So it's breaking sort of all kinds of barriers all over the country here. And this is, the conference facility here on the 14th floor. And we're thrilled that for those of you who are out of town, or maybe some of you who are even right next door, maybe have never been in here before. But this is a fantastic project, and it has really created a lot of economic development here for downtown Harrisburg. The city of Harrisburg is in the midst of a great renaissance. There is about almost $750 million worth of construction projects that are going to begin here just in the next few months, and that will carry over for the next several years. We're seeing, hundreds of new apartments being built, over the last couple of years, brand new flagship retail operations, and institutional growth like here at Harrisburg University, UPMC, Pinnacle, et cetera. So it's an exciting time here in downtown Harrisburg. We're thrilled that you're able to be here as part of this collaboration here to look at cooperation between the public and private sectors. I see an impressive list of participants here from all across the region and the state. And I'm just really excited that you guys are all able to come to Harrisburg today. It's on behalf of Harristown, and as the past chair of Harrisburg University and the current board member of the university, I welcome you all. So hope you have a great day today. Thank you, Pat.
And now I'd like to introduce Carmela, who's with us via conference call, my co-chair. Carmela?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Carmela Hinderacher. I'm from CNS Wholesale Grocers. We're based out of New Hampshire, but we have warehouses all along the East Coast as well as the West Coast and the Southeast. I wish I could be there, but I'm actually 8 months pregnant, so I'm at the point where I cannot travel. But hopefully next year, early next year, I can kind of meet everyone in person. Thank you guys for attending. As you see, we have started this group called the Endeavor. It's a private sector, public sector working group. And this group started working back in May, I believe. I think Molly kind of sent out an email saying there was interest to kind of start a group where we would collaborate between the two different sectors. And I just kind of wanted to say specifically I joined because I pretty much jump at any opportunity where the state and local government's willing to work with the private sector. Initially, I'm really trying to look for making contacts pre-event ideally, and then work through some of the issues that affect my supply chain, and then also understand what the government's doing and how that I can inform my own company on how we'd have to work around it. I hope, you'll hear through today, you'll hear some of the, in the past few months, some of the great collaboration that we've done between the two different sectors and starting to see some of those accomplishments within the past 5 months. So hopefully everyone who has not joined finds this pretty fruitful and ends up joining at the end of this session. That's it for me. So back to you, Pat.
Oh, these two? Okay. What are you trying to say to them short? I can't reach that. Oh, okay. How about now? Okay. Once again, my name is Pat Shaw. You see my title up there. I work for Brad. We have a lot of activity downtown that I'm responsible for, but what makes it all go very, very well is a lot of the folks that are sitting here in this room that I've gotten help from. I look here, Dan Quinn from Energy Steam here in Harrisburg. My daughter was with me in Harrisburg this weekend, and she says, "Hey, Dad, why is there smoke coming out of that manhole?" I said, "Honey, I know the real deal here because Dan Quinn taught me that's steam coming out." But we get a lot of people saying, "Hey, there's a manhole on fire." But through our cooperation with our partners downtown, we've learned that the better we work together, the more education we have, the more we understand, and less panic, and less concern, and more cooperation. So that's just one example of that. If you would, take a look at your agenda here. Let's just go by the arrow, right, Tom? Oh. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, you see we have 5 basic sessions today. We'll have a working lunch in there also. The restrooms and everything, whatever you need right around the corner. If you need something during the day, feel free to track me down, and I'll be more than happy to work with you and help you any way that I can. Do you want to go on the next one? Okay. Obviously, those top 2 words are what we're shooting for. We're results driven. When we first started this, when Molly reached out to me from FEMA and said about partnering and being part of this, one thing that it was right up front from Pennsylvania Emergency Management was this is a partnership led by the private sector with FEMA in support, and where we can cooperate together to overcome some common challenges and some real challenges that have been very difficult in the past to see if we can get that accomplished. So what we're looking for is results, and I think we've achieved a lot of those. And in your, you'll see in your packet as we go through the slides that there are a lot that has been accomplished so far, and there's a lot that's in the works. So let me just give you a couple things to keep in mind. Is that access to where your folks need to go to. Access control, but access to be able to get beyond that control point and to get there. And we're getting that accomplished. George Janji will be speaking here a little later. And I'll give you a good example when, I believe it was the 2008 is when we first came up and we worked with FEMA and the state on access to locations. I was attending a school board meeting, and we had a major bomb threat that was pretty credible downtown here in our facilities. And so I left my school board meeting, drove back I was about 30 miles northwest of here, drove back down, and I was able to show that letter that George Janji and FEMA and other folks worked on to gain access through the outer perimeter so I could come in and do my job here. And that made a difference. And so that's been updated and improved. We'll hear more about it later. So we're going the right direction. We're accomplishing a lot, but because the folks in this group and those who are unable to attend today have been working diligently to get results. And that's what our goal is today, to continue that process. Where did you move that from? Oh, okay. And now Tom will take over. And once again, if you need anything, please feel free to contact me.
Tom? Great. Thank you, Pat. First, my name's Tom Moran. Let me welcome everyone here. Before we start, I wanted to just do some introductions. So just go around the room, your name and your organization, and so we can hear people that are from different backgrounds, and we'll jump into our exciting agenda. We got a lot to cover. And we'll turn that one off. Okay. So let's start here, Dave, and then we'll work our way up and back. You know what? We do. Thank you. Might need two.
Good morning. My name is Dave Jones. I'm the CEO of Storm Center Communications. We're going to be talking a little bit after lunch about real-time data sharing in a collaborative environment.
Good morning. Were you ready for me to go? Good morning. I'm Cheryl Johnson. I'm from PIC and the South Central Mountain Regional Task Force Business Continuity and Preparedness Committee.
Good morning, Dave Hollinger, Drexel University, Public Safety.
Dan Wetzel, PennDOT. Pablo Adam, AT&T Public Safety Solutions here in Harrisburg. Hi, Fred Scolaro, the Director of Emergency Operations for FirstNet under AT&T Nationwide Public Safety Network.
Rob Shiner, from Director of Security from Sanofi Pasteur Vaccine Manufacturer.
Good morning. I'm Chris Manning, Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for the Boeing Company.
Good morning, Mary Graham Jack, Vice President of Information Technology and Admin Services for Project Home in Philadelphia.
I'm Bruce Walters from Benetcon Group in Venice, Pennsylvania, Director of Data Security.
Good morning, John Anascavage, also with Benetcon, and I'm the Facilities Manager.
Good morning, Ashley Burchard. I am a Public Sector Account Manager for Granger here in Harrisburg.
Good morning, John Van Zandt from the Public Utility Commission.
Good morning, Derek Rule from the Public Utility Commission.
Randy Fox, here as a community volunteer to learn a little more.
Scott Buchanan, Department of Homeland Security.
I am Pat O'Rourke. I was previously Chief of Police with the Berry Township Police Department. Hershey retired 3 years ago to take an opportunity with the Hershey Company as Director of Global Security and Government Relations.
Good morning, Chris Salisbury, Wenger Feeds. We have 6 feed mills throughout the state of Pennsylvania, also representing the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association.
Hi, Nicole Bear, Department of Banking and Securities.
Frank Hess with UPMC Pinnacle, the System Director of Security and Emergency Management.
Good morning, Art Kaplan. I'm with the South Central Task Force. I do evacuation planning and traffic incident management.
I'm John Kulik, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Petroleum Association.
I'm Joe Ritchie, Risk Manager, Capital Region Water.
Good morning, Jim Cox. I'm with the All Hazards Consortium, a subcontractor to Tom.
Good morning. I'm Steve Middleton, Asset Protection Solutions with Walgreens Pharmacy.
Good morning, Dan Quinn, General Manager at Energy Center Harrisburg.
Good morning, Justin Tewksbury, PPL Electric Utilities, Emergency Preparedness.
Good morning. I'm Denise Treaster, and I'm the marketing manager for here at Strawberry Square, and also work very closely with Pat and our security team.
Morning, Jason White, Managing Director of Safety and Security for Hershey Entertainment and Resorts.
Good morning, Dave Hillenbrand, Manager of Emergency Preparedness for First Energy.
Hello, I'm Karen Moe with the Earth Science Information Partners and working with the All Hazards Consortium on response data and making data more useful.
Greg McShane, Department of Homeland Security.
Good morning, Robert Crow, Mayor Bergen Corporation. I'm the Director of Emergency Response and Crisis Management.
Dan Bailey with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, Security.
Melissa Fry with PEMA. I work with Molly on the PADEAC.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Thomas. I'm the Executive Deputy Director of the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency.
I'm Molly Doherty from PEMA, Director for External Affairs, and then the Pennsylvania Business Emergency Operations Center.
I'm gonna use this here if I can get this working. Perfect. We're good. So what are the? Thank you, Mark. So for those that we haven't, how many of you? This is your first time to one of these type public-private thing? Okay, great. You're in for a treat. So let me tell you, take you back. 2003, I worked for in the telecom sector, and mergers happen a lot in the telecom. Where's Fred? I saw Fred. Fred knows about the telecom sector. I've known Fred for years. I worked for GTE, and it merged with Bell Atlantic and became Verizon, and I stayed for a little while. And then 9/11 happened and changed my world. And I saw during 9/11 some pretty bad things, and I saw some pretty amazing things. And one of the things I saw very quickly was the ability to cut through the stuff and have public and private work together at a lightning pace to get Wall Street back on, to get infrastructure built, to get the Pentagon rebuilt, to reroute traffic, to take care of the victims. It was unbelievable. I laugh all the time because we had competitors in New York City working on handshakes. Millions, if not billions of dollars working on handshakes, not a single PO, and they were moving out because they just were focused as citizens of the U.S. getting our country back, and that changed me. And so I retired in 2003, and I spent a lot of time working with states in my job career. And so one of the states asked me, hey, Tom, can you help us? We're working on this multi-state thing, kind of D.C., Virginia, Maryland, and we want to try to work with the private sector better. And you know, now you're a free agent, you're no longer employed. Would you help us? And I said, okay, fine. So they had a great idea of what they wanted to do, how to work together across state lines. It was all government focused. And but they had no infrastructure, no money, no people, no tasks. They just had a vision of how we can work. And of course, back then, vision was all we really had as a country to get through what does our country look like after 9/11, right? So anyway, long story short, that started, and they started working together on specific issues. And instead of a meeting like this, they had a conference call. And back then, the big topic, which still is a big topic, communications interoperability, right? Had radio systems working together, and so the state hosted a conference call, and I was kind of the yenta, kind of bringing the people together. And so we had 9 states, everybody had a program, and everybody wanted to talk about their program. So we had 9 weeks of briefings from North Carolina on their program, of Maryland, and it was fantastic. That call started with about 40 people on it, ended up with 1,400 people on it, because there was an interest in public-private, right? This was a venue that had never existed before, where government would open up what they're working on and allow private sector, the vendor community who sells the stuff, right? The operators like you all that run the power and water. This was germane to all of us. And this venue really kind of opened up. And I saw that fall in 2004, they had their first, like a conference. They had over 2,000 people at this conference. Any of you were at the first All Hazards Forum meeting? Nobody. Okay. It was in Baltimore, and it was a one. Okay. It was all about government and private working together. And people would scratch their heads. This is fantastic. Why don't we do this all the time? I didn't have an answer back then. So let me fast forward. Okay. In 2010, the board of the consortium, which is made up of states, companies, and a couple of academic representatives, decided, you know what? We need to focus on the private sector. The states working together do a pretty good job of that on their own. And they have NEMA, the National Emergency Management Association, that works together. But their problem is working with you all in the private sector. Okay. Why? That's an hour's conversation. There's perception and there's reality. And many times there's a lot of confusion on who it is. And then the frustrating part of the private sector is I get to build a relationship with Dave. And Dave's there 3 or 4 years, and then they have the disruption of the century called an election. And now Dave is gone. The new guy comes in, knows you, doesn't know you, and you're out. Sound familiar? Okay. Or on the regulatory side, right? I worked in the regulatory sector. You get a new regulator come in, they don't really know how the operational part of that, and they're making rules on things that can have a negative impact trying to do the right thing. So there's this constant gap between public and private. So our board in 2010 decided to we're going to start focusing as a region of states on sectors, because we need the sectors back in business more than we need to collaborate with each other. Okay. And I laughed during 9/11. FEMA came out, no disrespect to my government partners, and we're gonna help out New York, and we're gonna ship 1 million gallons of fuel to New York City. And I was on a phone call for this, and the guy said, well, that's fine, that'll last us about 10 minutes. Because we consume, I don't know what it was, 10 times that in an hour. It was unbelievable, right? And there was like crickets on the phone. And obviously there was a gap between what's needed and what the federal government can provide. And people think the federal government has all these resources. Well, they do, but they don't. They have funds, and they can buy things if you can wait 5 weeks, right? Because of the procurement stuff. When the private sector, they have it sitting in a parking lot, right? So this is the gap. So anyway, we started focusing on, I'll never forget it, a gentleman, many of you know John Shaner. John is a Pennsylvanian. He represented the electric sector. Our board had a meeting in July of 2012, and we brought together 6 sectors, New York, D.C., 8 states, and we all agreed, okay, folks, we facilitated this meeting. We got to figure out one sector. You got to pick one. And food was there, electric, telecom, there's a bunch of them. So they all voted on, we're all going to vote, we're all going to federate an agreement. It's called a handshake. We're going to work on electric. Let's get electric back first. Everybody's happy. So gentlemen's agreement, they all agreed we're going to focus on the electric sector. And so John Shaner was the person representing the electric sector. He worked at Pepco at the time. He also hosted the meeting and bought the food. I tease about that all the time. The food was okay. I told him it's okay. I said, listen, if you're going to bring government in, you gotta do. It was really a great time, and we had that professionally facilitated. And what we found very quickly was, at the end of that meeting, that drawing you saw of the canoe going over the waterfall. There's 2 people in it. One's government, one's private sector. And what they figured out after that meeting, we're in this mess together. We sink and swim together in the eye of the public. We have got to work better. We got to share information. We got to trust one another. We got to get a framework put together. Well, July, August, September, October, and guess what hurricane hit New Jersey in the fall of 2012, Sandy. And that made everything come to life. But the work these guys had done brought together new data, new information, new solutions that really government couldn't believe the private sector was sharing, and government went out of its way to help private sector eliminate delays at toll stations for all these crews coming in from around the world, from around Canada and the United States. And government and industry worked together. There was no purchase order. There was all the barriers came down, the trust was in place, and boom, they moved, right? So in January the following year, John Shaner met with the electric sector guys and said, you know what, we'd like to approach the board. We want to set up a working group and memorialize this activity we've been doing. We want to run it ourselves. We don't want government running it. We want to run it, but we want to operate it in an environment where government can work with us. So what they agreed to do was they agreed to form a new working group run by the private sector. And they came up with a name. Just coming up with a name took 2 hours. It was kind of crazy. But that became the Multi-State Fleet Response Working Group. John was the chair. Ernie Gormson from Verizon was the co-chair. gentleman from Bank of America, Jeff, I forgot Jeff's name. We had AT&T, we had a bunch of people involved in that in the very beginning. So what the Fleet Working Group was one thing. It was a legal framework that allowed states and companies to come together. The states were advisors. They weren't members, they weren't state, they were advisors to the process. Legally, that's very important. A state cannot be a member in something that private sector runs. It's just got all kinds of connotations about it, but they could advise all day long. And so we formed two working groups, one government and one private. And the Fleet Working Group and the East Coast Corridor Coalition Work Group came together in the middle, and that's where they did magic. They did planning. They came up with solutions, and they had some real arguments, but all behind the curtain in private. We had regulators involved. Dan Seaforth. Is Dan here? I didn't see him. He's here. I gotta give Dan props. Dan was like fantastic about this. He would tell us, hey guys, I don't need to be part of that conversation. You all need to work that out and let me know what you work out. And then Dan also provided the guardrail. Hey, you know what? If you did it that way, it's not so good. If you do it this way, then we can provide support from the regulator. Okay, Gary, okay. So what was great about that, the utilities involved were actually working with the regulator on an operational level, right? And there was trust formed there. And that takes time. I know. I came from that world. I understand that, okay? But when you're all trying to get the power on faster, then working together, that's where the magic happens. You know what? It was amazing what happened out of that. So I give you the history behind that so you should understand how did we arrive here. That model, the Fleet Response Working Group model, when I talked with Jeff and Rick, they came to Pennsylvania. They have their annual meeting in Pennsylvania once a year, usually in January, got pushed to April. And Jeff came and he said, you know what, we need to find a better way to do this at the state level. Around the country, states typically will get a grant and they will staff a person, and that's the BEOC rep, right? The Business Emergency Operations Center rep, one person to handle 25,000 companies across the entire state, and it's very difficult to do. And so they start, and an election happens, a new person comes in, and they cancel the program. Or they start, and it's government-driven, private sector comes, they don't trust because they don't run the environment, so they don't necessarily share and engage, and the state's running the whole thing. That's too big a burden for the states, right? So Jeff says, hey, we'd like to do something in Pennsylvania, but we want to replicate that. We want to replicate the model of the Fleet Response Working Group, run by private sector, sustained by private sector long-term, but we'll support it. We'll provide the connections and work issues. And what we discovered all together was you got to work issues. You got to solve problems. You can't just meet and talk and meet and eat. Okay, you all do enough of that. So anyway, here's the list of the original issues they decided to work on, and they were all electric sector focused, but I think anybody that uses roads, anyone that uses roads, these are issues. And it was all about eliminating delays, educating and eliminating confusion, and working to get, resources on site quickly. This is half the list, okay? Interstate, what do we do with commercial motor vehicle? What are the state commercial motor vehicle regulations across a region of 20 states? Where do we go to one place to find that stuff? Didn't exist. Well, now it does because they fixed it, right? The other one was toll stations, permitting, faster permitting. That's a long-term issue. Federal declarations, state declarations, and waivers. How many of you all know that the single biggest impediment to, I know in the electric sector, maybe in yours, of them moving stuff is waivers for regulation relief? Let me know that. And in some sectors, they don't even move until they get the document. And they can wait for that document for 12 hours, 24 hours sometimes. And government doesn't know that. Well, once government knows, oh boy, they expedite it crazy. So a lot of it's education, but that's a big one. And what I didn't realize is how many people come across the Canadian border to assist U.S. businesses to get the power on and fuel and things like that. I didn't know that. That's a big impediment. We had one company said, Tom, we had 90 trucks headed to Pennsylvania. I think you guys were at the same conference. The guy told me this. 90 trucks, Hydro One, Dave. I don't know, the gentleman from Hydro One was there. But he said, we had 90 trucks delayed, 8 hours at the border. We do the math. That's a $185,000 cost. One delay, one storm, one company. Very expensive. More importantly, power gets delayed. See? So we didn't realize that. The other list was waste station operators. How do we get through waste stations and communicate? You can't go past an open waste station. You have to stop. Not just the utilities, but the contract and everything else. A lot of issues. Okay. So what we did was, let me back up. What we did was each one of these issues, we decided to focus on a problem and a short, mid, and long-term solution. Okay. And for each one of these now, we've developed a webinar to educate people, an app that organizes the data, a process that expedites the delays. We've put together processes with our states that help them, that notify them to who's coming and why they're coming and so forth. It's one problem at a time. That was the trick, one problem at a time. And if you work it slowly, we call them use cases. And I'll show you how this process works. But we perfected it over the years. So Jeff said, hey, I want to start that in Pennsylvania. I said, okay, fine. Here's what we need to do. The state needs to do this. We need to put we had several meetings with county and state folks. We put together a list of people that FEMA helped work us with. We got an invite. How many were at the very first meeting in May? Kickoff meeting. Okay. Couple? Okay. So that was, the government sponsored the meeting, held it, and said, here's what we're going to do. What we did was we formed a steering committee. Pat was appointed, nominated, elected. I'm not sure what it was, Pat. It was just fast. I just remember it was very quick. By the time the smoke cleared, it was like, okay, Chairman Schultz. All right. Okay. Because let's get it done. I mean, we don't want to spend 3 months doing that, right? Let's move on, right? So at the end of the day, we had a steering committee. We formed it up. And I'm going to switch back to presentation mode here. Okay. So I wanted to give you the backdrop so you kind of know what we're going to focus on today are problems unique to this working group. Okay. All right, I'm going to slide down and show you, here's the canoe. And I can tell you the summary of today is what we've done is create a legal environment for that to happen on an issue-by-issue basis. Sometimes government will have an issue that they need private sector to advise them on. Sometimes private will have an issue, probably 80% of the time, that they need government to advise. Not just emergency management, it could be law enforcement, could be regulatory, it could be executive, doesn't matter. Okay, we're going to have one issue today. It's going to bring them all together. I think it's fantastic, the directive issue. Okay. So you can see as we started creating products and solutions, the question mark is training. We've got technology we borrowed or stolen, whatever you want to call it, from NOAA, $5 million piece of technology unique to this environment, which what we did, they gave it to us. We leveraged it. You'll see a demonstration on today. It's a way for me to share data with someone without giving them my data. Fantastic technology. And we need that. We have 30 states. You've got fleets moving from all over the place. How do you coordinate 30 states at a time? So we looked at about 85 different tools and solutions out there, and sure enough, it was right sitting in NOAA's garage. We didn't realize that. So all of these choke points, we ended up getting solutions for. The state helped us on the toll station one, but I wanted to show you that these many times become cross-sector benefits. When you solve a road issue for the electric sector, I'll be darned if that doesn't affect food, fuel, telecom, all of them. So all of these solutions expedite movement of information or resources across multiple sectors. Greg McShane's here from DHS. Greg, okay, Greg understands DHS has to look at the whole picture, right? Everybody. So electric is one, but they're handling the whole critical infrastructure. These types of things are important, and part of our working with them is getting more information, more data out of those folks as we go. So here's Endeavor's kickoff list, right? So I don't know if you can read all that. We have a number. We're gonna focus on 3 things, but our philosophy is very simple. You have a laundry list of problems. We run it through what I call the criteria garden. 3 things. 1, anything that doesn't meet all 3 of these, we don't work on. The first one is it simple? Is it simple? Is it going to take 3 presidents and an act of Congress to make happen? Too complicated, put in the parking lot. Is it simple? Can we actually accomplish something? Number 2, is the problem going to have major operational impact in the private sector? You understand? In the private sector, operational impacts. Not necessarily in government, in private sector. And the third one is, can we show results in 90 days? Fact. Why? If no results, empty rooms. People do not have time. They need to see progress. They need to see movement. So this group got started, put together their initial list. We had 3 use cases before we left the first meeting. That took us about 2 years with the fleet work group. And you're gonna get a chance to put your brush on the canvas today. So you're seeing they've accomplished quite a bit. Pat, is this one? I'm turning one of these back over to you. I just wanted to touch on what we did was put the legal framework in place first. You guys have a charter that says private sector runs this, government advises this. Here's the chair, co-chair structure. Here's use case committees. Here's membership rules and guidance. Here's how we throw you out if you abuse it. All they'd have that legal framework in there, run by the private sector. The same charter we used to establish the Fleet Workforce. So getting that legal framework in there, and then educating people that this is a government, private, collaborative effort run by the private sector. So the private sector will drive the use cases. The private sector will help pull the solutions together. Government will advise that, and in some cases, you'll have government come up with an issue that private sector advises. What does that look like? We had an issue in a state EOC years ago, and the utility, I won't call out which one, sent a PR person when really they needed an operations person, and the EM director threw them out. And I asked the EM director, he's right in the meeting. We had a meeting. Shaner was there. We had all there, and this guy told the story. I said, what happened? He said, look, my governor was in my EOC, and he's asking me a question I need an answer on. I go to this person and say, what's the answer to this question? That's above my pay grade. That's true, but that's the wrong answer, right? You with me? So we had a breakdown. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't crazy about sending my staff to county and state EOCs when you're trying to put out the fires. You with me? You need to have all hands on deck, so it's really hard. But you can't do that to a state EOC director, or you're never going to have a friend there ever. Okay, so the state said we need a process to train private sector liaisons that come into a state EOC. We had 4 states, 4 companies get together. They work 6 months, and they put out the ELO, the private sector liaison guide that provided tools that have answers to these top 10 questions. It was brilliant, and we started circulating that. You know what? The problem went away. And all it was misunderstanding and education. Education solved that problem. But we didn't have a place to have the argument. Now we have a place to have the argument, right? And see both sides of an issue, which you heard about today. So Pat, I'm going to turn this back to you. Is this your piece here? I think I'll run the slides. I'll run the slides here. Yeah.
Just a couple of things I want to touch on that you see up there. So I mentioned access before, transportation, the other one that we're very diligent on. All of this that you see up there happens informally, often in communities. Doesn't matter if it's urban, suburban, or if it's rural. I give you a real good example. Hershey, when Pat O'Rourke was chief, and Director White over here from Hershey Entertainment Resorts, they had a real challenge that occurred when they had flooding in the town of Hershey and the zoo and the park and all those things. And they were kind enough to come to our downtown working group that we host here in Harrisburg and talk about what went well and what didn't go well. So we had a private sector and public sector coming together, talking to us and saying, here's what worked, here's what didn't, here's how we should move forward. And we learned from that. Frank Hess is here today from Pinnacle. Frank's been with Pinnacle for 30 plus years, right, Frank? Okay. And Frank still has photos and notes and information from when we've had flooding in the past. Once again, people getting access in, for employees getting access, for services getting access, and what type of transportation, working with the city, the county, the state, to get access in, to get employees in, to take care of patients, that sort of thing. So having this background, and when Tom and Molly start working together, it made sense. This is what we do, but now we're doing it more in a formal fashion, and we're doing it statewide. So I've seen the results of this and how well it's worked, and that's why when we start doing it, okay, this makes sense because we've done this on the local level. Everyone in here has done this on the local level. Like I mentioned, NRG Energy, Dan, we did a exercise together. So it reduced panic, increased cooperation, and it worked very well for us. So people understood how steam works and that they're not going to blow up, and that we can work together and we can make this happen. So once again, now we're looking at this statewide. So as you see what we're trying to accomplish, we're not putting up any roadblocks for each other because we've all experienced these challenges before. So the only thing I really want to emphasize is partner, if you haven't already, partner with
the public sector in your area with the private sector in your area, and you'll find out that cooperation and how well that works. And a lot of times, it's like Tom says, through a handshake, through developing relationships, and it proves out to be very, very well. It has been very successful for us here in downtown Harrisburg, doing the same sort of thing, but on a very, very informal basis. I was so grateful to see that we're working on this in a statewide approach. So that's about all I had, Tom, I want to share.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. So what we wanted to do today was to go through, at the first meeting, they developed 3 use cases. One of them was we need to have timely and actionable information from transportation. And there's many different tools out there, but we all need to agree we're going to use this one so that we're all on the same page. It's all about coordination. So the counties have their own, the state has them, everybody has them. So what we did was we call it a federated agreement. We all agree to agree. No attorneys? Okay. We just agree to use that. So we had a demonstration of the state Pennsylvania 511 site. How many know about the 511 site? Who doesn't know about the 511 site? Okay. In the first meeting, we had quite a few. It's sponsored and maintained by the state. We'll show you an example of that. It's the best available data that we know from the state level, and some of the counties feed up into that. And they agreed, okay, we're going to, as first, so we're all on the same page, we're going to use that. So this was the first use case, situational awareness on transportation in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Okay. Well, is it maintained well? Can we rely on it? We had to go through that whole thing. The answer was yes, yes, yes. So we agreed on this one. So this was the first use case, is situational awareness. How do we get it? Where do we go? And Molly's gonna make that available. It's a public site. You can go to it. I think it's pa511.gov, right? Yeah, we've got the website. So that was the first use case. I'm going back to the spreadsheet of issues, right? We had many more, but these are the ones they zeroed in on. So what they did was they had a webinar, recorded it. It's a product. Now we can share that link with anybody, you and anyone, and we now can show people what is the 511 site. And watching that webinar, I learned quite a bit. They've updated that quite a bit. That's pretty amazing. So the other one was we needed a way to standardize some things, right? So we're working on 2 other ones that are going to look at trailers, which I thought was an interesting one. This is one we're going to spend a lot of time on today. The trailer issue, I don't think I have the trailer one here, do I? Okay. So let me talk about the empty trailer ones. I did not know this, but in Pennsylvania, during a disaster, you can deliver your stuff. If that trailer's empty, you're grounded under certain circumstances, right? Well, we didn't realize what a big issue that was for the private sector. The best part of that conversation was how the state DOT folks explained why that rule's in place. That 90% of the big furball accidents that cause people to sit on roads and very dangerous are caused by empties and jackknives, trailers. So, okay, what's a short-term solution for this? And sure enough, government came up, Craig Shuey came up with an idea. Well, why don't we pull a committee and let's agree on, gentleman's agreement, right? Federated agreement. Let's agree on some minimum weight that the private sector can keep in that truck so that they're allowed on the road, okay? Everybody looked around and was, why didn't we think of this 10 years ago, right? This kind of funny thing. So that process is underway. So the movement of empties is a big deal 4 or 5 times a year, but it's a big deal because when the stuff hits the fan, that's when you need food and replenishment, fuel, medical supplies the most. So that group is formed. The other one here we're going to hear a lot about is this whole definition of access to restricted roads. We're going to work that issue this afternoon, but this was a big one. It was a document written in 2008. No, I didn't know it existed. We found it. The private sector added and made some edits, and Pete is going to provide an update on that. The whole idea is to get that document now refreshed and up to speed. It'll cover a broader use of private sector issues. I think it'll make a lot of the education factors go away. This is a big one. This is a collaborative policy product that they're going to produce out of the work group with the state. Fantastic. I've never seen that 15 years. I've never seen policy done jointly like that. So I'm going to skip ahead. So some other use cases, and then we're going to open up for some discussion here. We're looking at several other ones, like the waiver request process. Okay. How many of you folks here in private sector are governed by regulatory laws? Okay. Quite a few. Okay. So waivers, remove those for certain conditions, certain period of time, so forth. So we want to look at what's the process for that so everybody knows what that is, because that changes sometimes during different types of events. We want to know what that is. The other piece was government and other private sector wanted to get a better idea of what's the process in the Commonwealth for the utilities to restore power. What is the process? Who's first, who's second? Now, that's a moving target. I don't know a lot about it, but I know enough about it to know that's not an easy answer, okay? That's like telling me, where is your teenage son right now, okay? It's kind of hard to answer that. You know he's somewhere, right? Well, the utilities, not just electric, but telecom as well, these are complex systems, and when they break, you've got to spend time to find out where it's broken, then you've got to figure out how to, it's just not simple. But if we can understand a basic process, then people that know, they can plan and manage better. I know in the food sector, for example, we had a big meeting of the food sector and about 18 electric utilities, big phone call. The whole idea was, hey, we need to find out better ETRs, estimated time to restoration, ETRs, right? ETRs. You hear it all the time. I do. And the electric sector explained why it's so difficult to provide an accurate ETR, because there's so many pieces involved, right? The food sector said, okay, I got it. It's complicated, but I need to know more than that when I call in for restoration. And he said, and here's the magic of that call. Here's why I need to know that. Because in my sector, if power is out more than 4 hours, I don't know, something like that, he said, I've got to start throwing away all my frozen food. There was some time limit that would, he said, and that's going to cost me $1 million. Okay. All I want to know is, do I need to get a generator turned on or not? That's all I want to know. So it's going to be longer than X hours. That's all I want to know. I don't even want to make the call. Just tell me, okay, so that was an education piece to say, okay, maybe we can get utility by utility. That's done at a local level. Maybe we can find a better process for that. But what I didn't realize was all the food sector people wanted to know is the power going to be off longer than X hours? If so, no problem. I won't hold you to that, but I'm going to turn on my engines now to put generators and fuel in place to keep the store running. So understanding utility prioritizations, guidance documents for empty. This is one we were just talking about here. Local regional dashboards. This is a good one too, because a lot of the counties have different types of dashboards and information, and the actions at the local level, you've got to find out what's going on there so that you can aggregate it across multiple counties or even the state. Another one working on here with one of the utilities is a mutual aid agreement to share drone information. Right. One of the big problems is storms hit, yellow tick goes up. You got to get in. You can't get in. I got a drone supply. Now you can't get in yet. So what we're trying to do is put a process together working with Jeff and PPL. Just come up with a document that says, okay, we'll badge your guys as our guys. We'll get them to the LK, fly the drones. If you share that drone information, some of it or all of it, with our local emergency responders and state emergency. So the trade, access, data. Simple. Everybody goes, okay, first meeting was like this. What's going on? Can we trust? Second meeting is like this. Third meeting, they're like high-fiving each other. They're like, this is going to work. Of course it's going to work. Of course it's going to work. People are doing it anyway. They're already flying drones. They're already getting information. All we're doing is speeding the process up, right? That's the bottom line, is the speed. So I get a little excited about some of this stuff because when you see it happen, you'll see what I'm talking about. So what I want to do for a minute is take a second and talk about when you guys have issues, every sector is a little bit different. But I think, Molly, we have electric, food, fuel. We got a bunch of different sectors here today, right? So I'm going to throw out a question. I wanted you guys to provide perspective, right, on this. Molly, I think we have, yeah, 1 second. Okay, good. Huh? Do you have a, I hope so. Okay. All right. So here's the question to the private sector. We'll start with. I'll go right down through what I call the lifeline sectors. Right. So I'll start and move through there. And some of you may have said this already, but I want the room to understand some of the issues. So big issue hits in Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's an ice storm. Okay. A lot of power outages. A lot of trees and debris. It's a big issue, and Pennsylvania gets them, whether it's a flood or an ice storm, really not. So I want to start with the question is, what is the biggest operational issue? And there's probably many, but from your sector, what is the biggest operational issue you face? And you can pick one of these three: winter storm, flooding event, or other. What's the biggest operational issue your sector faces during one of these events in the early stage, right? So maybe day one, day two, for you to get things back back in order. So I'm going to start with electric. We'll move right down the sector. If you don't answer, that's fine too. So let me open up first to our electric sector folks. I know Dave. I know you're here. Anyone in electric? Dave's it. One more. I'm sorry. I thought there was two. Okay. So Dave, would you mind sharing kind of the? Oh, I'm sorry. We have another one.
Yeah, I'm with PPL.
PPL. Very good.
So our big issue in larger events like an ice storm or a wind event in March, we got hit with a winter storm Riley. Day one, day two is really just knowing what damage is out there. So that's more of an internal issue. It's just
knowing the damage.
Yeah, getting out in the field.
What's broke.
And the challenge is there where 20-some inches of snow on the ground, getting to those places too. So they're our biggest challenges the first day or two of the storm.
So knowing what's broke, getting somebody in there or a drone or whatever to assess what's down, what's broken. Okay, that's a big one.
And that's a big piece in adding to what we call ERPs at PPL, but ETRs.
ETRs.
We can't really give a good estimate until we really know what's down. So
yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that because I don't think a lot of people understand the amount of work it takes to get to a point where you can give out an ETR that's accurate. Well, I remember DC was arguing with John Shader. Well, John, we call you. We need ETR. Well, we don't know yet. What do you mean you don't know yet? And then John had to walk him through. We have to do 1, 2. It's regulated. This is 1, 2, and we have to do 12 things before we can give you that. And well, why didn't you just tell me that? Okay. So getting the damage assessment and getting information on what's broken. Okay. And what are the things that prohibit that?
Resources. Depends when the storm hits. If it's a Saturday, just getting people in.
So people availability, right? Okay. Are there access issues as well? There's debris or.
Well, yeah. So we serve the Pocono area. There's a lot of huge hunting and hundreds of acres that are gated off. We found, there were customers out up there. We couldn't get to it. There's gates that are locked.
Okay.
Just a lot of issues like that up in our northern territory.
Right. Just because of the terrain and the geography there.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Good. Dave. Got a mic here.
The only thing I could add is when he talked about roads that are closed due to deep snow, over my career I can remember 4 or 5 big snowstorms, but we can't get the guys out. We had to bring in front end loaders from a quarry because we had to push 3-foot snow away, so we had to open up the road to get to customers.
Okay.
To have the ability that we could get help to open up roads to get to customers' restore power.
Okay.
And then with trees down in the roads, we have to get to them to make sure no wires are hot so that we can clean up so that they can clean the debris. So it's kind of the chicken before the egg thing, right?
Right.
So those are 2 big things in storms. Windstorms with the trees down.
Right.
We have to look at every one, even though we may not have facilities laying on the ground, right? So that adds to extra work to send people out.
Yeah. And I'm not sure a lot of people know this, but if there are 1,000 calls, correct me if I'm wrong, in Maryland, this is what my stat, if there are 1,000 calls for a wire down, guess who has to go out first? There's either telephone wire or power wire. Guess who has to go out first? So I thought the fire department. Sometimes it is. It's the utility. And the guys in Pepco told me, Tom, 80% of the time it's not our wire. But we have to take the time to build. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but sometimes that happens. That impacts resources and availability of people to do stuff. And I'm not sure everybody understood that. I didn't.
People aren't educated on what wire is.
That's right.
Electric versus other.
Yeah, and we're not going to educate the public on forever on that one. I don't think that'd be great if we could. But thank you, Dave. That's a big one. So you got debris removal, you got access, and you got to get people to move snow. Yeah. Excellent. One more. We had another. Yes, sir.
I kind of had a question. For PPL, I know you're doing a lot of remote sensing. You know where the breaks are. So really it's physical access to repair the damage. Is that what the main problem is?
You got to really talk into the mic good because I can hear you.
Yeah, so we have a very intelligent smart grid, but those devices may protect miles of line. So it's still, we have an idea where the fault is, and 100% of the time we can't determine what exact location where the fault is. It just depends how the fault happened. And in Riley in March, you had something trip open and de-energize a circuit, and then it just kept blowing and blowing, and then you had 5 other cases of trouble behind something, so you had embedded outages. So there are big challenges in those large
You have to
events.
do a root cause analysis to figure out where the real problem is, right?
Right.
Multiple sites bring problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great discussion because that takes time.
Yeah.
Right. And time is the whole thing, right? So the more people are aware of these, we can capture use cases. What can government, local or state, do to expedite any piece of that, or not, whatever? But these are big issues. Yes, sir.
See, I'm Derek Rule. I'm work for Dan Tilforce and John Van Zandt for the PUC, so I'll try to do my best Dan Tilforce impersonation. So, I've been with PUC over a year now, and my experience is to your question about what can we do at the state level. Really, what we do at the PUC is we work with PP&L and First Energy and the other electric distribution companies. We're conduits between PEMA and the counties and the utilities. And using Riley as an example, we want to make sure that, the most expedient response is at that local level. So we want to, at the PUC, from the PUC perspective, we want to make sure that the utility is working closely with that affected county. And sometimes the utility will go into that county with their own priorities. Using some of the Northeast counties as an example, we had trees down in roads. So the electric company was focused on electrical distribution, rightly so, but the county needed the roads open because folks were out of power for 12 days. They needed the roads open. So sometimes we just need to make sure that the utility is working with the county. So to Dave's point about the resources, sometimes that county can coordinate those resources. So the PUC side of things, we're kind of the conduit between all the moving parts and just making sure everybody's working together sometimes.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So in Riley, the PUC acts kind of as a coordinator in a sense. Is that what you're saying? On the government side?
Yeah, so the first thing we do during a disaster is we have contact lists with all of our emergency points of contacts for all the utilities that we regulate.
Right.
And we tell them, hey, the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center is activating, the PUC desk is activating, and they don't even have to be activated. They know how to contact us 24 hours during an emergency. So then what happens is all the utilities, the electric distribution companies, should have representatives that will go into the impacted county emergency operations centers. So that county emergency manager has a utility person right there on staff, and they can work with PennDOT and the county and all the local resources to make sure that we have a common operating picture. Sometimes the PUC will have to get involved to make sure, to remind the utilities like, hey, we all need to be working together. Here's the county's priorities. And most of the time, the utilities do that very well on their own.
Okay, good. So that electric. Anybody else? Okay. Comms. I know Fred's here. Fred, anyone else from the telecom sector? Okay. Okay, sir. Good. All right. Pick one. What's the biggest issue operationally? What's early on?
So, actually, I was waiting for somebody to say that communications. If we can't communicate from what the damage is in the field coming in from any one of these, or where the roads are closed, or where the trucks close, knows me a long time, so I'm in public safety my entire career from 9/11 to Katrina. Communications is the biggest failure in each one of these when we can't communicate and share that information. So I would have made that as my number one issue, and then assessment and damage and everything after that.
Okay. So Fred, from your perspective, same issue kind of thing: access, road clearing, damage assessment.
That's correct.
Anything unique to the wireless versus landline? Any distinction operationally between that?
So sure, because some of ours is not just wire, right? It's microwave, portable satellite units that can come in and bring up communications where it's down. Okay. So some different things where when they have to repair a wire, they have to repair a wire. If we have fiber go out to a site, we can reroute through other fiber carriers. Okay. The energy sector, that's kind of more difficult to do reroute. So I think the communication side can be a little bit quicker recovery in different phases than the telcos can having to string the wire. And then the reverse goes, just working on the hurricanes, we repair our fiber, and when they go put poles and things in, they break our fiber, and then we go back down again. We have to kind of coordinate with that.
The human factor, right? I get it. Yeah. Let me know if they ever fix that one. Okay, that's a big one. Yes, sir.
Specifically on the communications for the winter ice storm, you mentioned PA511. So today, all snowplows in Pennsylvania can provide information of where's the snowplow, give you the route, historical location, and as a citizen, you can actually view that. Just this year, all snowplows in Pennsylvania have FirstNet connectivity, which provides priority and preemption.
And that's displayed on the 501 site?
Correct.
Awesome.
So,
okay.
in terms of telecommunications,
So
now they have
they're
priority.
routing the AVL data through FirstNet?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. And that covers what? All state or county as well?
All of Pennsylvania snowplows have fleet AVL on them. State-owned.
State-owned.
Yes.
Okay, state-owned. Okay, right. Yep. So what'd be great is local, right, and maybe commercial. I don't know about it in Pennsylvania, but in Maryland, everybody slaps a snowplow on the front of their truck when that storm's coming. My truck is out and working, right?
No,
it's like a fleet.
These are PennDOT owned.
No, I know, but on that, there's a lot of resource out there is my point, and I think harnessing that, if all those are tied up and Dave needs something here, how can we work it? That's all. Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you, Jim.
So I would be kicking myself if I didn't make this comment too. Just to give everybody a tangible example, during Riley, one of the things the PUC and PEMA can do for the electric distribution companies is northeastern PA, they had impassable roads all over the place, and PennDOT and the state imposed interstate restrictions. They closed down the interstates in northeastern PA. The same, no blame on PEMA and PennDOT, but it was the same day where First Energy and PP&L and other resources were up there focused on electrical restoration. So the interstates were closed for public safety, but we needed the utilities out there to work on restoration. So the utilities called us at the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center at the PUC desk and said, "This is a problem for us. Does the state want restoration? What's the priority here?" And of course we want restoration. So we worked with Jeff and his folks at FEMA, and we walked over to the state police desk. That's the beautiful thing about the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center. We walked over to the state police desk and our friends at PennDOT, and we were able to get a industry-specific waiver to let the restoration crews traverse those roads just for that day or two while everybody else was off. So we were able to handle public safety, but at the same time focus on restoration. We can also get hours of service waivers and everything like that too.
That's great.
So, Tom, Major, is that you in the back? So, Major didn't get to introduce himself. I'm going to ask you to take the mic and do that. But you're right. Pennsylvania State Police is a huge partner of ours. And when he introduces himself and you realize who he's here, you understand how important working with the private sector is in the state of Pennsylvania. You don't get this kind of access all the time, and that's how important this is for us. So, Major, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Major James Basinger. I'm the director of the Bureau of Patrol for the Pennsylvania State Police. I've only been the director of Bureau of Patrol since May. Before that, I was the troop commander in Troop E Erie. Very familiar with a lot of the situations you're talking about. Last winter's snowmageddon that we had up there, 4 feet of snow in less than 24 hours was quite cumbersome, and I'm very familiar with what we're talking about today. I look forward to participating in the event, answering any questions you may have.
Again, thank you for coming, Major. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, Dave. Sure. Yeah. And by the way, if one pops into your head, shout it out. Molly's we're building our library today. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, this one just popped in my head because finding areas to bring in outside crews. So if we bring in, like Hurricane Sandy, I forget how many thousands of linemen we had brought in, and you can bring them to an area, but hotels might be filled, hotels might be out of power. So we have to feed them, provide material, place where they can sleep so that they can work the next day. So finding areas to serve 500 men, park 250 gigantic trucks in an area, it's harder and harder to find. So I don't know, we talked about this before, the park and rides, the state-owned, the state PennDOT provided park and rides. There's one in our service territory that we'd love to use.
So, Dave, is that a staging area or
Staging
a mustering point?
It could be any or all of
Could be
those.
either.
Correct.
Okay.
It could
Potentially
be a base camp. It
Okay.
could be just a material site. It could be a holdover until we know where we're sending people. You know, they might be there the day before the storm starts.
Do you want to use your example, like a simple one?
Yeah, there was, our meteorologist said that this weekend it could be bad. I looked at the weather on TV and it's not as bad, but our people said it could be bad. So we want to be prepared.
Right.
And they were going to bring in a couple hundred linemen outside of our service territory. There's a park and ride on Route 33, which I have made arrangements through PennDOT that if it's available to use during an event, they would gladly let us use it. So we had asked for this weekend to bring in 200 trucks to park there.
Okay.
We weren't given enough area to fit 200 trucks,
Right.
so it's kind of useless. Now we got to find another, which we had another, and I don't want to be a big one,
Sure.
but we had other properties, and they're all being sucked up and gone.
Right.
There's no big parking lots anymore where you can bring in that kind of thing.
Right.
So we would love to have some kind of agreement, maybe PP&L too, because we're kind of twined in some areas where we could use the parking lot on Route 33 is huge.
Yeah.
If we would get permission to say this is a priority, and yes, you can use the back lot, which could easily probably hold 300 trucks. So that's the kind of stuff that would be super helpful for us.
How about a private sector lot?
We, believe it or not, we've gone to many malls, private parking lots. We've done a lot of searching to do so. There is some areas like flea markets up towards Stroudsburg, but it's all grass. If you get 2 inches of rain, you're going to have more trucks stuck than you are working.
So that's a great use case. And there's Dave, there are already buns in the oven on that exact topic being worked at the regional level, right? Same issue, right? But we might merge those at some point. That's a big one. And that's not only electric. That affects. And once you guys leave, then we get wave 2. Now we got that could be a number of issues, but certainly electric is the big one. Getting the power on quick.
Yeah, and the stupid thing is, for a material tent, when it's pouring down raining, you set up a tent maybe 40 feet by 60 feet and put material in boxes, linemen come, they grab what they need and go.
Yeah.
If it's exposed to the rain, the boxes get wet, everything gets ruined.
Yeah.
So even to put holes in the macadam to set up a tent, a circus tent, but maybe we use gigantic, they have concrete weights with rebar hooks on them. Maybe we could store that there in the back part of it so that when a thing happens, we just have to drag them out with a truck, prop them, put the tent up, we're ready to go.
Now, that's a good one. Yeah. And yeah. So
yeah, the private sector to try to get help in that arena is very difficult because they think there might be insurance issues.
Yeah, there's
and
liability.
usually they're very good because we'll fix anything that we break, if anything gets broken, curbing, if trucks jump over curbing, practice it, whatever. But we do the best we can to make it actually better than what it was before.
So the use case is staging areas, right? And that you got it. That's a good one. That'll affect a number of sectors, by the way. I think that has potential to go.
I mean, from the retail perspective, there's certainly a large consortium of retailers that are represented either through PFMA or some of the other organizations that may be able to support that staging area needs outside of the impact areas in opening, because we certainly have a lot of parking space, and it's going to ebb and flow during an event, so we're going to be jammed up and then it's going to subside, but it certainly is an opportunity for us to work together to accomplish some of those objectives. Some retailers have space, others do not.
Sure.
But there's some groups like Walmart that are very heavy into supportive roles. Walgreens, for example, is a smaller footprint, but during Florence, I was monitoring stores down there, and I saw utility trucks, crammed in the parking lot. We weren't open at the time, so it's not a problem. But they're using it as a staging area. So
Outstanding. So it sounds like we're going to have a staging advisory committee forming it around this. That's how we do it. It's all phone calls. Here's our methodology, very simple.
are you moving to retail at some point, or you just?
Unless we have one other comment from telecom, I want to move to the next one, which could be retail or fuel, whichever. One more comment, Fred?
Just because we just went through this, all the planning that's happening at the state level and the public and the private partnerships falls apart. So talking about housing, we had reserved a lot of housing for our FirstNet responders to go in, and all of a sudden we went to those rooms. FEMA came with a superseding letter and took all the rooms. And that was true, and we had to go back to FEMA. So I think there's got to be coordination through from the state level up to FEMA that we did pre-planning and we prepped the rooms to have our equipment and personnel there. And then when they went back, their rooms were gone because FEMA came with a superseding letter. So I just have to identify that could be an issue to be joined.
So Fred, that use case is already. Go ahead, Molly.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm laughing because this has come up.
Molly.
We had a regional discussion with other states, and FEMA was in the room, and they said, so glad you're here to help us, but you took all our rooms, and you took them all, and you're not staying in them. And so that's one of the reasons why this partnership is so important, because that's a great example of we're government, we're here to help, and we go out there and thanks for nothing. So absolutely, it's a great point.
And this issue actually just came up on a national level. Molly and I were both just at a national meeting, and we talked it's one of the things we need to work. All of the state directors are going to try to work with our friends at FEMA and DHS, simply because a lot of us have Pennsylvania's price gouging protection, so that the utilities shouldn't have to pay higher rates than they normally should. But it does get tangled up with contracts that are pre-existing in place at FEMA. So this has got a lot of traction, again, at the national level with a lot of state directors, because we're all having the same kind of problem.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem we just haven't talked about enough yet. I don't think it's anything we can't fix. We just haven't focused energy on it, but I think it really is right at the top right now.
Yeah. And half the battle is the memory. Everybody forgets. We don't forget. You guys aren't going to forget. We can document it now. And we're working with FEMA Logistics on this exact issue. We had a workshop, and it was hysterical. Well, we didn't know that. We don't care if you didn't know that. You guys took all the rooms, and our guys, the utility was saying that, our guys had to stay 90 freaking minutes away. And guess what? They only used about a third of those rooms, but they had them all reserved for good reason. I'm not saying they're bad people, but you can't run a cruise ship like this. Let's get together and fix this, right? So that's on the drawing board, right? Let me move to, I want to say fuel, but that can be retail. In Pennsylvania, that can be both, right? Because, I mean, it's interesting. So John, let me turn it over to you what is the biggest issue that you guys face operationally?
So to explain our, what sector we represent in the oil industry as far as the association goes, is we're distributors and of all petroleum products, heating oil, gasoline, lubricants, et cetera, et cetera. And if we had a chart, it would be our folks have a fleets of trucks that take the petroleum products from the pipeline terminals across the state out to customers. So a couple hundred of our companies take heating oil from terminals to homes and businesses. Gasoline distributors, we take terminals from the terminals either directly to retailers. Some of them have their own convenience stores. But, you see our tractor,
Hey, John, hold it.
Delivery truck constantly in Pennsylvania. And I would think on this particular subject, and we've had some great discussions up to this point, but to educate the group, one thing I've told Molly a couple of times is that what I just described as our industry sector is not regulated in Pennsylvania. And the partnership that is build up between the PUC and the utilities and these types of situations, I think is great, and that's the way it should be. And I'm not saying our folks are complaining about not being regulated. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference when you have a total free market that runs everywhere from the major oil companies where we get our products down to delivery. So, and they're kind of used to fending for themselves, and many times I think most of the time when their emergencies are happening, our folks would say just get out of our way.
Right.
But if we're talking about the example of the winter ice storm, let's say you have a winter ice storm in the middle of January. My answer to you is what the biggest issue is. Depends in part in what the weather has been leading up to that ice storm in terms of cold or even other storms. So if our folks are delivering to 1,000 customers, they're very proud of the fact that they keep them, they have automatic delivery in many cases, but they're out there keeping tanks full during the course of the winter. I mean, that's what they do. But if you think about what would happen if, let's say, you had 2 weeks of polar vortex.
So super cold.
Super cold. That's going to slow down. That's going to increase demand. But let's say even worse, you had either snowstorms leading up to that, or let's just use the ice storm. So the ice storm hits. And so our folks are, concerned about obviously the roads and getting to terminals and also getting, to the homes to deliver, and also for freight. Many of our folks deliver propane as well. But if you have an ice storm, and let's just say it accumulates or hangs around for a while, just kind of imagine what these streets are like in Harrisburg, when they're full of snow, or the same problem with the utilities have getting out in the rural areas, and you just get slowed down by, domino effect in our industry.
Right.
Even as simply as the fact that it takes longer for, if there's a significant ice or snow event, it takes longer for the guy delivering in the truck to get the hose to the house because he has to go through snow and ice.
Is that fixable?
Well, I don't think that particular thing is fixable, but what is a major concern of ours is the hours of service.
Exactly. Hours of service, which is a big one for your sector, right? Okay.
And so it may not be just because on a particular day, we got this emergency. Right. It's what accumulates before and after the emergency that's critical. And we've had some discussions about hours of service. I know in the last year it was really the federal because of the regional, which we got hours of service pretty much for most of February, March.
So the issue then, certainly you got transportation access issues, but the issue then for you guys is speed of that hours of service waiver, right?
Correct.
Getting it on Monday versus Tuesday or Wednesday.
Right. And there's, and again, on our gasoline side, critical to get, well, the other issue that's really become more significant in recent years and how Molly and I first started talking about this with generators out there.
Right.
Which isn't necessarily the same customer to an oil company.
Okay.
And that's the same for the retail.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Becca, on the retail side, our goal is obviously restoration of some type of service, whether it's pharmaceutical.
I'm sorry, can you define retail so everybody knows what?
Well, retail being the food sector, drug sector, health sector, health support. Is trying to get that restoration of service back up, getting food, ice, water back in the community to stabilize things, and then drugs available, good drugs available. Yeah, just to clarify. And sometimes we're designated as that COD area where we're a distribution point for pharmaceuticals. But I agree with the earlier comments on damage assessment. One of our challenges is trying to get into an area to do that initial damage assessment, and we don't always have the right vehicles to get into that area. So we're looking for support. We partner with the National Guard to get into an area. Just to get that initial damage assessment so we can begin that planning triage process beyond getting support people in there to get the store up and running.
And how does your sector know that somebody is already doing that for that certain area? Maybe I'm looking at coordination between retail, electric, telecom.
It's usually
How do you do that?
It's usually at the local sector.
Okay.
I mean, but I think I heard earlier that communication between local and state region are critically important. So if we can help foster that communication abilities, we don't always know what's going on at the local level. Certainly, service restoration and timing of that is critical. It's been talked about, and then just any kind of logistical support we can look to with other partners that are going to be down in that area to give us an idea of what may be going on, so that we can begin that support function.
Excellent. So one of the first products we produced here is a directory, right? Everybody's name and number, and Molly's got that, and so we'll make sure we capture that and share that. Because I've heard time and time again, the most powerful tool we all have during a disaster if it works, is our cell phone.
There is one other thing. There's just one other thing, that's looting. We from a retailer perspective, we're going to have concerns about looting. I saw it during Hurricane Sandy down in New York with stores. Actually, we're working with the National Guard down there during an event where we had stores being looted, and they actually broke into the police armory next door. So we were seeing gang looting, gangs moving through areas. So looting and security become an issue for us. The average retailer could have 5-6 million in product in there. Drugstore is going to have probably $1.5 million, $2 million. And you certainly, the thing you do not want is those drugs back out on the street. You do not want those out there.
Okay.
So we are concerned about that and trying to assess where we stand.
Okay. We got time for a couple other sectors here. Yes, sir. In the back.
Hi, Chris Salisbury, Winger Feeds. I'm not exactly sure what sector I fit into. I'm either multi-sectored or I'm on my own island, but we feed animals, right? And hopefully there's no animal activists in here, but the chicken and the pork products that end up in the stores in the retail sector come from way out on the farm.
Yep.
So we have 6 mills in Pennsylvania. We operate through Lancaster County up into the central part of the state, and we go all over. Our operational issues in a situation like this, we've been depending upon PA 511 for many years. Also, we have a great relationship with both local and state law enforcement in our areas. Our CSA scores are low. We participate in all sorts of things. So we have a great working relationship we established for just that part. But our problem comes in that everybody is, I say this with love, everybody's focused on getting the large areas up so we can get tractor trailers to the grocery store. We can get fuel, to the Sheetz and the Wawas and all that. Well, we're on the roads that you guys go on Sundays when you're taking your ride through the country to look at leaves. That's where my tractor trailers are going.
Right.
So it's really important that, from the utility sector that we try and make sure we know where the power's up and where it isn't. We try and work with PA 511 and local officials to find out what roads are passable. And then we even communicate with the farm we're going to make sure it's there. Because the big thing is, when something like this happens, the producers, right, the Purdue's, the Tysons, the Hatfields, they call up and say, we can't come get those animals, right? And when I was in the regular transportation world, I used to think feed was like watching Mayberry RFP and Aunt out there throwing chicken feed. Well, it's not. It's a science. So we have things working with the producers that those animals are going to get picked up on Tuesday. Well, that farm runs out of feed Tuesday at noon. The animals get picked up at 2, right? So if they can't get there to get those, I've got to find a way to get my tractor trailer there to give them feed. So we depend upon everything you folks have talked about, but nobody kind of thinks about us because it's I didn't think about us when I was in the regular transportation world. So
you're codependent on roads,
right?
Comms,
right?
Power,
yep.
Water.
Well, not so much water, power. I mean, but then being able to communicate. So probably roads and comms are the biggest.
Okay.
And unfortunately, and I understand it completely. Everybody's going for the biggest bang. So you're clearing the highways and you're clearing the the municipal areas and we're not so much worried about out in the farm. But That's why I'm happy to be part of this, so we can try and work on that. But
I can tell you, sir, sometimes some of the craziest ideas come out of these discussions, right? And somebody thought about, have you thought about this? And no, nobody even thought about that. And we came up with this crazy idea that we were going to use some of the approach. But I appreciate we're coming up because every state's different, right? Some states don't have a big industry like that. Others have a huge, the whole state's dependent upon it, right?
And just to put it in perspective, our company, without giving away company secrets, we ship over 2 million tons of feed a year in the Pennsylvania area, and it works out to be about 1,500 loads of feed a week.
Wow!
Right. So when something like this happens, I mean, there's a lot of commerce. Commerce is a bad word. There's a lot of things we can't get done, and we need to try and catch back up on that.
So if that doesn't get fixed, animals don't get fed, you got a mess.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you. Any other sectors? We're coming up on our time here. Any other comment? Yes, sir. We got a mic coming to you here. Thank you.
So critical.
I'm sorry. I meant to tell you your name and organization again, please. Thank you.
Rob Shiner from Sanofi Pasteur. So critical manufacturing, vaccine manufacturing. A lot of similarities here. Power, utilities in general, but we need people to produce our vaccine. So we employ about 3,000 people during a storm or an event. We may have about several hundred to 1,000 people, critical personnel that need to get in to produce the vaccine. We have raw materials on site, but there's a limited amount, and some of them are just in time. So eggs, for example, coming from the same rural areas, so that transportation, it's just in time. There's several 100,000 eggs a day at peak flu season that we rely on from around the Commonwealth, and they have to get in. And once the vaccine is produced, we have a limited amount of cold storage, so we have to get it back out to our distribution network. But it's relying on a lot of different sectors and people in the room here to produce that vaccine. And then we have to house those people as well. So if it's a multi-day event, we house them in local hotels and things of that nature to make sure that production continues.
Got it. Good. So our next use case will have a direct impact on that, right? I think, Molly, if I'm not, that's part of the sector. Comment over here. So that's getting your folks into work. Right. Got it.
Okay, so just to follow up on a couple questions here. Well, I guess they weren't really questions, but statements with the back roads that we call the PEMDOT and where these farms are located. You said you use the 501 network and stuff, and that's excellent. We really would like you to use the 501 network. It gives you a lot of good information. With us working with AT&T and our AVL system, our plow trucks are now on that network. So our main core in the 501 network are your interstates, your major roads, and some of those back roads aren't on that network. But with our plow trucks now being on there, if you zoom into that specific area, so if you know where a farm's located that you need to get to, it will show you when that road was last plowed, because that plow truck will leave a trail and it will actually show up in the map of, hey, that road was plowed 3 hours ago. Well, in the last 3 hours it only snowed an inch, so that road's probably passable. It's not the silver bullet, it's not the end all be all. Hopefully someday we can get these back roads on our network also. But that's a lot of information we gotta gather. So we are working that direction, but that's something you could utilize to look at moving forward.
Great. Okay. Any others before we go? Okay. Yes, sir. Name and organization, please. Thank you.
Frank Hess with UPMC Pinnacle. So we're healthcare, and we pretty much rely on every one of these sectors to help us do our job. But our biggest operational issue for us is our resources of people, our staffing. We have to be pretty much self-sufficient up to 96 hours by regulation. So we have, generators of fuel and extra supplies and equipment and food and things like that. So we can go a few days if necessary without getting resupplied, but it's the people, our staffing, that we have to get in. So public transportation often gets shut down. You're talking about winter storms and flooding, and we have a large amount of people, particularly at our Harrisburg site here, that use the buses and other public transportation means to get to work. We've got folks that, locally, the main highways might be open, the snow emergency routes might be open, but their neighborhoods might not be plowed out. We've got people out in the country, up where Pat's from, that can't get out maybe for 24, 48 hours.
Right.
So we work with local hotels to try to put people open overnight. But again, the resources, particularly essential personnel, is our biggest issue.
So getting your folks into work. Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Robert Crow, Mayor Source Bergen. We are the pharmaceutical supply chain. Fuel in general, obviously, we all have our plans and our backups and all that, but there comes a point in time where fuel supply starts to choke, and we're relying on, basically relying on retail for our source of fuel, both generator to run distribution centers and also for delivery vehicles. So having a secondary access or assistance to access the fuel, if our trucks aren't on the road, drugs are not getting to the hospitals.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. This fuel thing is a regional thing as well. Let me give you a real world story. Real bad ice storm. Pennsylvania was running out of propane years ago. I want to say whatever it was. The supplies were down. The ship bringing the stock was frozen in the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, couldn't get. So they were banging on the new Governor Hogan's office at 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to get him to get the Coast Guard or whoever it was to go out, ice cut or get that thing in there so the crews could come in and get the fuel, propane, and get it up there. It's amazing. I didn't realize the fuel supply chain is a regional issue many times when it gets really bad. So this is a big one. And I think within the state, we probably, I don't know all the processes there, but what do you do when you run out? What do you do when your members run out? What do they do?
We've bought tankers and brought them in from other regions.
Okay.
We've driven in, we've set up temporary fueling supplies in our park.
So you'll find it in Illinois and try to bring it
in our parking lot. And most of the time we do okay with that until maybe the National Guard realizes we have a tanker full of fuel and they decide they'd like to have it.
So if there was a data set that mapped all of the commercial fuel providers in the country, that would be helpful for you guys?
Well, I think we're already kind of okay there, but yes, that would help. Okay. But then the whole process where we may need support from outside, from above that.
I got it.
That process. Okay. It's more of a process of identifying who we are, what we do, and why we might need a little bit of push there from somewhere.
And that process involves government as well as private, certainly. So it's a B2B thing, but government's got to be removing obstacles or whatever those would be, regulatory or roads or health, whatever.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, this is a work group designed to do that. So great. We're up on 10:30 now, so actually a little over. So I want to move to our next discussion. So what you just went through is a larger version of a process where we start building a parking lot of issues. And the reason we wanted to go through that with you is because now you'll see that the process we have to build a use case, there's a system behind it that we've developed over the years. And when you understand the system, it'll make a lot of sense, right? There are some issues, and I asked one of the gentlemen, is that solvable? John, I mentioned to John, is that solvable? And here's why I asked that. Some aren't. And we all just have to agree, we may not be able to get there. Okay, we had one use case that was just going to require, congressional approval, and it just who's going to wait around that long? And then you have other issues that really require a local snowblower to clear. Like you said, John, I can't get to the house, right? Some of those things we just have, when it hits the fan, limited resources, you do it. So let me show you the use case methodology. So what we just went through was in the middle, you'll see a big thing here called sectors, right? So starting at the top, you've got government and private sector information. They got dashboards and data on stuff. That is not the answer to what we're talking about here. The answer comes below that. Is looking down below that is the sector. And we have 8 or 9 of them in the room today. Below that is a layer called, what are your operational problems? We just went through that with you today. What are the operational problems? Okay. From that, we document the problems. Okay. Now we've got a rough idea what they are. We've got to be flushed out. But from down below that, then we look at, all right, we try to build a short, mid, long-term solution to everything. So to do that, you need 3 things. You need who are the right people to be on this phone call to work this issue? Okay, you need to know. Can you hear me? Yeah. You want to take 10? All right, 10 minutes? 10 minutes. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Hey, George, are you on the phone?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, George, we can hear you loud and clear. I just want to make sure you got in.
Yep, I did. I appreciate it. Sounds good.
We're gonna take a 10-minute break.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started. So, our next session, we're going to get into the access of essential personnel. This is a different issue than what many people think. This is not access past the yellow tape. That's a different kind of access. This is access to restricted roads, but yellow tape will be next. Okay? So, I'm just looking through George, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me, Tom?
I can hear you fine. So what I'll do is just do a quick introduction of our use case methodology, and I'll turn it over to you, okay?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. You want to hand those in? Oh, okay. Oh, awesome. Oh, good. Even better. Okay. So just a comment, we left water off, and we need to make sure that the water sector, and I think we initially had some discussions around that, but certainly you let water run out, you got a major problem for everybody, right? So I didn't get a chance to walk through that. But I wanted to show you and give you an idea of our process. This screen, what's on the screen right now is our process we use over and over and over again. So we start with the sector, which is our third layer down from the top. Then we work at the operational issue of problems, which we just did very briefly, but, you know, we will take a sector and we'll spend quite a while on that. We'll look at a number of them. Then we'll get through who are the people, what is the data, and what is the security around this. Some of the issues that come up are sensitive. They're competitively sensitive, right? We pay attention to that. You have industries that compete very strongly with one another, but they have the same problem. So how do you work that environment? And that's what we've figured out how to do. So you put security around it. Some of that time, sometimes it might be competitively sensitive information. Sometimes it might be, there's a lot of sensitive categories. So we want to make sure we pay attention to that. Then down below that, you'll see use cases, right? And what we build is a library of use cases that articulate the problem, the impacts of the problem across multiple sectors, the people, the data, the security, and now we have our use case. And from that, we reach down into our data sets or processes or things that have already been done. And you see a thing in there called ORL, Operational Readiness Level. That's a standard the Fleet Response Working Group put together to determine this data is more reliable than that data. Because there's a lot of data out there, but there's no standard to vet. Is this crowdsourced information that's not really operationally ready yet? Or is this data coming from a reliable source with reliable backup and reliable standard? And this was done through our sensitive information sharing work group. Karen Moe and Dave Jones are here. I saw Karen. We took a model that NASA developed. It was 9 steps. We got it down to 4. So we rate data by ORL 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is ready to go. 2 and 3 are getting the process. 4 is okay, but go at your own pace, not as reliable as the 1. So it's a way for us to rate data and sources. That encompasses a lot of things, but it's the whole idea is speed and to make it reliable so people can make decisions faster. And then we build these data sets, like 511 is a third-party data set that becomes part of this. And as we build use cases, we pull from the bottom, and we pull it up into it, and out of that comes a new process, or out of that comes a third-party website that no one knew anything about, or comes an app, or comes a data set. So we house all that stuff in an app store at the regional level that we're working with Pennsylvania to open that up to the state level, right? Because Pennsylvania will develop solutions that need one place to go get solutions that are trusted. So that was the whole concept. So I wanted to show you our methodology. I talked about it. We have a template put together. It asks these questions, which I think we started a little bit with you guys on these issues. Once we go through the use case template, which has been developed by the work group, now we bring that into our governance structure. So you'll see everybody, it's open work group, okay? We have a steering committee, and then we break into use case committees to start working these issues. Those are all done via telephone, okay? So we always got time to meet. So, but we get together on the phone, we work the issue, it's facilitated, and then out of that, we're looking for, we have a process very simple. We have 6 calls, and it's either go or dead. If you can't come to something in 6 calls, we end it. Why? No one has time, number one. And usually by the second or third call, we're going to know if there's a solution we can get to or if it's too long term. So these use case committees got stood up very quick. And the first one, we had the solution right away. The second one, we're almost there. And the third one, we're working on today. So our use case management process, you can see on the screen, active, we work, and parking lot, we get to later. So what we have on the screen now is some of these are parking lot and some of these are active. They kind of tie in. But the more we do this, the more we see you can hit one use case and you can solve 3 or 4 of these issues sometimes. Because if it's a transportation problem we solve with good transportation information, that helps the issues, right? So the more we do these at the regional level, the more you guys can pull from them at the state level. Some of you companies are state local to Pennsylvania, some of you are regional, it doesn't matter. The idea is that we continue to develop this over time and then move this across the country. So our use case approach, once we pick a problem, we want to get everybody's perspective like we did today. We're going to get government's perspective on it. We want to get private sector's perspective on it. We want to get local government's perspective on it. Because the broader you open the aperture to understanding, the better you can communicate and understand what people are saying. Okay? So I want to show you there's a methodology behind this. It's been developed over time, really since 2008, but really since 2013 when the working group was started. So we want to thank all the folks that were part of that. There's many of them, 45,000 of them across the country now. So they put in a lot of time and energy. So what I want to do is introduce George Giangi. We're going to talk about this access of essential personnel. And as I said before, this isn't getting beyond the yellow tape access yet. This is allowing people to be on roads during disasters, which is step 1. And I think this working group's been doing good work. Jeff's going to provide some backup to this. So, George, I'm going to turn it over to you. We can hear you loud and clear. So, over to you.
Okay, sounds good, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. Hey, just a little bit of background. So what Tom has done very successfully on the East Coast with all the states, I'm sort of a microcosm of that at the 8 county-wide level in South Central Pennsylvania. What we did initially was we worked with a few businesses. I come from the business world. I also have 27 years of experience as a municipal emergency management coordinator. And what we recognized really years ago, and it shows up again and again and again with every disaster, is both the private and the public sector have the same thing in common, and that's the return to normalcy from a disaster. As quickly as we can get back to normal and operate, do what we are in business for doing, the world becomes a much better place. And obviously, government emergency responders rely on essential critical services to be operational for them to do their job. One of the things that I canvassed the business community about is what commodity in particular do you feel like you're lacking in terms of a disaster? And almost to a man, it was unanimous. Situational awareness. They wanted to be aware of what was going on with the disaster so that they can make intelligent decisions to operate their business a little bit more efficiently, especially when they're relying on supply chain with fleet management, personnel coming in to nursing homes, hospitals, gas, water, electric, that sort of thing. Has essentially provided that for, and what the state is offering all of you and more businesses to come is an opportunity to get in on a conduit to provide some input that shapes public policy. This is really a unique opportunity. It allows you the opportunity to make sound business decisions. So, for example, if the roads are not closed as of right now for a disaster, but are about to have some travel restrictions imposed, how great would it be if your organization knew ahead of time and made the arrangements knowing that the roads are about to be closed within 45 minutes or an hour, or at least travel restrictions imposed within 45 minutes to an hour? So one of the use cases that Tom has alluded to is the directive that was put back together in 2008. If you all remember, in 2007, we had a major ice snowstorm blizzard that impacted a lot of the interstates, 78, 81 in particular. Roads were closed. People were stranded on the highway. That was really the genesis of the PEMA 2008 directive that allowed for the possibility that businesses, the private sector, would have to travel along roads that are ordered closed in order to maintain their operational readiness and restore critical services. That was put together in 2008. It really was not widely known, and it was resurrected just more recently through Tom and Molly's efforts in looking at it as a use case. Hey, let's look at it. It's been almost 10 years. Where are we with the directive? Should we rescind it? Should we beef it up? Have we captured all the essential elements of it? So we really kind of put it through the ringer. We ran it through a lot of the private sector representatives. In fact, I made some notes just hearing the discussions earlier this morning from Wenger Feed and Santa Fe Pasture that perhaps we've excluded feed and also pharmaceutical and medical supplies as some of the categories. So I'm going to make a note of possibly including that in as essential services. So what we looked at was we recognized that, like 511, the directive was really more tailored toward the state. The governor declared a state of emergency, and it was really state roads that would be ordered closed. We recognized immediately that being a commonwealth, of course, municipalities, townships can also close roads based on the circumstances. It could be because of a shortage of equipment, a shortage of manpower, for whatever reason. So we tried to include that in there, as well as a governor-declared road closure. We also looked at the possibility that there are other disasters that may result in restrictions or closures of roads. Obviously, in 2008, what was on everyone's mind was ice and snow blizzards because of the prior year. But there's also things like there's 5 nuclear power plants in the Commonwealth. There's also flooding, obviously. There could be agricultural quarantines that may order some roads to be closed. So we sort of expanded the definition to allow for other categories that may result in road closures that may impact your operational efficiency. And so to that end, we provided input into the directive, supplied it back to the state. PEMA was coordinating the process. They partnered with the state police, with PennDOT, and other stakeholders, and is currently being reviewed at the state level, and hopefully it'll come to fruition in the form of a statewide directive. Now, the nice thing about this, as Tom mentioned earlier, it'll outlast us all. It'll be a directive that will be in place. It'll be institutionalized, essentially, that'll outlive some of the elections. So this is really your opportunity if it does not currently address your needs. And I believe, Molly, you provided them with at least a draft of the travel directive that outlines some of these categories and the process that we'll be exercising. Are there any questions about what I've talked about so far?
Okay, so just a comment from the private sector. I've never seen this in 15 years doing public-private work, ever. I got to take my hat off to your state in doing this. There's a directive. The private sector work group redacted it, updated it, gave it to PEMA. PEMA's looking to do it, and not only they're going to do it, they're going to put it embedded in a fashion that outlives them. Fantastic. Great leadership. So George's been walking through that. So no questions, George. Go ahead.
Okay, and Tom, to that end, what the directive essentially provides for is municipalities and counties can identify what those critical services are, and that takes a wide spectrum. Obviously, if I live somewhere out in a small rural community, to me a lifeline may be the Rudders or the 7-Eleven convenience store, or maybe if I'm a nursing home, I have a backup generator, but I'm relying very heavily on a diesel fuel oil delivery truck or propane to fuel my generator. So those are the kinds of things that are oftentimes overlooked, but obviously they're very essential in order to maintain normalcy in a community. So there's a directive letter that is given to the private sector to determine for themselves who are those essential personnel, and it should be provided and updated periodically by the company director of safety or security or whomever that says here's the latest. Here's employee John. Here's employee Mary. Here's your letter. Because if you're on the road and there's travel restrictions, you could be cited for being on the road. But in this case, this gives you essentially the capability of being on the road, assuming, and this is an important caveat, assuming it's not a life safety issue. Obviously, if the road has experienced a bridge that's gone out because of the disaster, no one's going to travel the road no matter what sector you come from. So obviously, life safety comes first. But as that is the case, if you can provide that proof in the form of this letter signed by an authorized officer of your company, the state police or the local police or the fire police person assigned to that road closure would recognize that this is a letter that's part of the directive and allow you passage onto the road in order to provide those critical services and needs. And there's no cost, obviously, to do that. Some states have incorporated such things as a badge, which has to be, every year you pay $75 or $100 for employee. It's outsourced to a third party. We decided that's really not the way to go in our case. So that's kind of it in a nutshell as so far as what this directive is trying to accomplish. We're not there yet, but I'm very confident that with PEMA's leadership and their coordination, we'll get there. And again, this is a great opportunity for those sectors that feel like maybe you're not adequately represented in this travel directive to provide your input.
Okay. Thank you, George. Any questions? Microphone, hang on a second.
Who actually issues this letter?
Okay. Jeff, you want to grab a mic? So, just so the work group had to have a federated agreement on the contents of this letter. This letter will not change. The logo and the signature. And then there's a training component. This is why it's important, state police, local folks, and we all have to agree to this, right? We're in stage 2 of 9, if you will. To answer your question the contents is being developed by the work group in conjunction with PEMA and Jeff, so we'll all agree once we have it there. Then we go to the second tier of participants, certainly the locals and state police. You got state police involved, right? But from a process standpoint, that's where we are right now. We've federated the draft of the letter. We federated the draft of the directive and gave it back to Jeff and PEMA, and they're reviewing that now, okay? But if you notice, it's an official of the company that's signing this. So he or she are going to be held accountable for this, right? So I don't know if you've gone up line in an organization trying to get your executives to sign off on things, but it isn't something you're going to do in a hallway typically. So they're going to take it serious, and they should take it serious. So Jeff, comments? I want to open it up for you.
Well, Tom, you answered that question exactly what it is. So there's when we get into the discussion, we looked at the directive. This actually went out as a circular in 2000.
Yeah. So
our legal staff is actually on this conference bridge because we're taking a really hard, serious look at this. To figure out, is it a directive under what we issue as directives, or is it more guidance and framework, which is what we currently have issued for road closures, no matter what they are, in terms of checking on people and stuff that all of the agencies have agreed to. So that's yet to be determined. My sense is it will become a framework and guidance put out by PEMA with the states. But the answer to the question, as we get into the discussion more, this is about trust, right? And this is about the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center working with our business partners. I'm talking at the state level now, the Pennsylvania State Police, the transportation, so that the trust has to come with private sector that if you're ABC business and you are certifying by this letter that your employees are necessary for life safety in the Commonwealth, that's what they are. Because eventually somebody's going to get stopped, they're going to be asked what they do, they're going to be asked where they're going, and they're going to say, oh, my boss gave me this letter because he doesn't want me to be late for work because we manufacture widgets and our profits are down. When that happens, that company's never going to get a waiver again. We're going to be having a chat with that company. And quite frankly, if we find that out after they've been let go, our friends in the back with the guns are going to have a chat with them. Not that they're going to get shot, but it's about trust, right? It is about trust. It's about trust. Great. Because we're not going to vet that ahead of time. That's what this partnership is about. Right? That's what this is about. That's what the group is about.
Got some questions.
Jeff, Tom, if I can also add, I know Frank Hess is in the room. Frank has actually incorporated that letter, the words in that letter, on the back of their company ID badges for those employees that are deemed essential, which again is a quick way of making sure that the employees have that verbiage that's needed if and when it's needed during a disaster.
Nice. So just as a comment, who's going to enforce this? My recommendation is it's you private sector people are going to police each other. If somebody breaches this trust, I think the private sector's got to say, okay, one warning, and then you're out. Because you can't have government with elections and turnover and somebody comes in that's not familiar, and we have a new major, we have new education, if this gets breached, private sector, it's over, and it hurts all of you. I've seen this happen. So this is a great opportunity, and I think at the end of the day, the private sector working with the state needs to make sure they have a process to manage this, because mistakes are going to happen. We got that. It's the breaching. It's the purpose breaching that I think is going to hurt the trust barrier, which is that. That's it. Comment.
Hi, my name is Mary Graham Jack, and I work with Project Home. We're a social service agency in the city of Philadelphia. We run the Health and Outreach Coordination Center 24/7 for chronic homelessness off the street. I'm reading through the list of following categories I've got the directive up on my laptop, so I'm trying to figure out where my outreach coordination workers fit in this.
Right.
And thinking that I can be qualified under like emergency personnel, because these are the guys who are out there working with the police, but I don't see it directly in here, so I want to make sure that I'm not violating the law.
Welcome to the kitchen. I mean, this is how we started right here. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
And that's what this discussion is about.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. And one of the things that, let me just expand on that, not just, and I know your organization, they do tremendous work, actually. But it's not just that. We talk about pharmaceuticals, right? We talk about the supply chain for pharmaceuticals. We in emergency management pay attention to that all of the time. One of the things we don't pay attention to is the supply chain for medically assisted treatment. And what do you do in a disaster when you have 3,000 people in medically assisted treatment and all of a sudden they can't get the medication and they can't get the treatment? Somebody in this room is on the government side is going to deal with that. So there are things that we've talked about before that we miss. Quite frankly, it's fairly we definitely miss it. So let me talk 2 seconds. You tell me when I have to shut up, okay? So tell you how this came about. I was around in 2008. This actually was put out in 2000. Where's my friend Art, who's been around as long as I have. So in 2000, we put out a circular. FEMA put out circulars and directives. And Nicole Bordonero, our chief counsel, should be on the phone. When I say something wrong, you'll hear her say, "Jeff, you're wrong." So she does that. She's allowed to do that. So encouraged to do that, actually. So we put out a circular that we found it in some county emergency plans, actually still being used when we look for it. But in 2008, 2007, and George alluded to this, we had some really bad storms in Pennsylvania. It was Governor Rendell then, and the governor just says, everyone stay off the roads. That's it. The roads are closed. I don't want anybody on the road. Most of us kind of, and all our friends in state police as well as FEMA says, what does that mean? How do the troopers get to work? We, quite frankly, didn't think a lot to it before it really happened. We had that circular out since 2000. I will guarantee you most of the people in the room that were trying to figure out didn't even know it existed because we never used it, quite frankly. So that spun the 2008 directive that came out after that, and this is when she dealt with red cards and credentialing, and I'm sorry to say that we really still aren't where I'd like us to be with credentialing in Pennsylvania, but I think that when the responder is going to help. So that's how this started. How do we make this work? Fast forward, there was some, we declare a state of disaster emergency. We don't particularly close all the roads, but if the roads need to be closed for safety reasons, they get closed. What we've learned, and what we're doing much better at, is incrementally putting restrictions in place, right? Lowering speed limits, empty trailers, things like that we try not to just close the road. So we all need to understand this, and George said this. If the road is closed for safety reasons, nobody's going on the road. Y'all got that? Come at it. Doesn't matter if you're delivering eggs, the Sanofi, which is probably one of the most important things around if you understand what they do, or if you're a trooper and you can't get to work, you got to find another road because the road's closed. You physically can't get there. That's Dan's job. If you can't get through, you can't get through. What we're talking about is they're restricted to only essential people to get to work. We've learned that a lot of times, states, government, we think, oh, that's us. That's what this partnership is about. We know it's not just us. Quite frankly, during disasters and emergencies, you all are way better at doing stuff than we are. took some of us a long time to realize that. Feeding's a prime example.
Let's just jump into this.
Government hates to feed people. We think we can feed people. We suck at it. Like, frankly, it's horrible. You're getting MREs and you're getting. You guys are way better at feeding people. If we can get you open and people eating in your establishment, we're way better off than us trying to do it. It took us a while. So I sent this to Tom. This is why this is important, Tom. You being in business in Pennsylvania is important to everyone that lives here. That's our job, right? We all work for the citizens of Pennsylvania. You not losing money, you staying in business is really what's important to us. This is what's lost. This is really what's lost. It's unbelievable. This was Texas A&M, I think, did this study. It's billions of dollars in truck sitting because of road closures and stuff. So we're trying to eliminate that the most we can. So we took the directive. We took what you look for. I can talk through it if you want, Tom. You have to tell me how you plan on this going. It's up to you. Control. Right? Yep. So let's talk about what we can and what we can't do. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did have a question before you, and I mentioned this to Rob Glenn at FEMA National from the private sector side, but it would be great, and I appreciate the effort behind the paper, but if we could get into maybe some kind of app technology where you have participating partners in that on the private public sector side, where you can control where access is not granted, where access may be granted on a limited basis, and then we could, through the same process, companies would sign up and be responsible for administrating their people with an app function, because the ability to push paper out happens okay, but there needs to be more behind the paper, to your point, training, other things, because there is responsibility with that. But an app would be another technology push in a good direction that makes it much more efficient, more timely, and gives the state a level of control how you administrate an emergency, much like you've done with 511. You've built a pretty significant informational infrastructure there to communicate.
I couldn't agree more with that. And you're right. This is a starting point. We had a meeting the other day with the folks that provide the security badge access to our building. 3-year-old building, and the technology is outdated. You figure that out yourself. But anyhow, we need to update the technology. One of the things we talked about was exactly that. Was a instant access credential that, quite frankly, we could push to businesses, right? And it's time limited, so that it is from this time to this time. And then as it gets more sophisticated, it can actually be Bluetooth readers if the state police needed to have them to make sure they know who it is. So I agree with you. We're not there yet. We just crawl, walk, run, right? You're short, trying to get up a little bigger.
Long-term solution.
I agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. So let's talk about Commonwealth of Pennsylvania really quick, because Tom knows me a long time, so I'm sorry. What you're going to get is no BS, right? If I can't fix something, I can't fix it, right? We cannot tell the local elected official that he has to follow our guide, right? It's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, right? What we're going to do and what we can do is help influence them by discussions. The police association is here. You have folks like this in a room that makes a difference. The major of patrol for PSPs and things, that makes a difference. We can help get the right people in the room. We can design a framework. We can put the framework out there. The local government can say, hey, this makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. We want to do the same thing the state's doing at their level. We can push the emergency management community to do that and to adopt that. Unless Nicole speaks up and says something's changed, we can't say this is a FEMA directive and you have to do this in ABC community, because it's a directive, right? It's not, we don't own the laws. FEMA doesn't own the laws. The vehicle code owns the laws that would be cited under if, in fact, you didn't follow the directions. And that isn't the intent of this anyway. The intent of this is to help the local governments understand how important the relationship with their businesses are and to want to do the right thing. That's really what we plan. So you will find in this directive that we talk about locals We talk about them adopting it. We tell them why they should adopt it. But what I know it would be nice, George, if we could say you must do this, or now we're going to take the birthday or something. But we can't do that. So we need to understand that, right? We can help influence, but we can't absolutely say we have to do it. Any questions about that? Good. All right. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to, I'm a little nervous about this because he has a gun, but I'm going to ask the major, before I keep talking, to be kind enough to just give his perspective on this and how this. Oh, he's the guy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. From the PSP perspective, when there is an emergency or a snowstorm,
It's on.
get it up closer.
Thank you.
When there is an emergency or a snowstorm, our perspective, our number one priority is life safety. Secondary is scene stabilization, and then return to normalcy is the third thing that we're concerned about. So when you have an incident, and I'll relate it to what I know coming from the Northwest, is the snowstorm shutting down the interstate. What we have to do out there is shut down the road, and that's the case where we thought nobody's getting out on that road because it's closed until we can make sure everybody that's been involved in the accident that's blocking it is either transported away or whatever. So what we do is we stack up the tractor trailers. We pull them in one by one. We'll turn around what we call four-wheelers with passenger vehicles and get them off the easiest way we can, and we stack up the big trucks. And then we get the road open and we let people through. During the snowstorm last year, we actually had the directive incorporated by some of the local townships in Erie. Mill Creek Township actually had their own directive out there, and they were one of the ones that closed down roads. We do not have the time and the manpower to be doing routine traffic enforcement during these. We are responding from emergency call to emergency call. So we're not at a post where you're going to be getting onto the highway checking credentials. However, you slide off the roadway and you're hauling a truckload of widgets and you weren't out there, or you have a fictitious letter, that's when we have the problem. Now you're going to fall under that. The directive was called Title 75-6109, Power of the Governor During Emergencies. That brings not only the regular fines that you would receive for sliding off the roadway, but now you have the additional fines of violating that directive. So we're not out there hammering people. If we do come to a location where somebody stopped from one of your companies, for example, a guy pulls up with a truckload of eggs, and they're not always the smartest guys out there. But like, yeah, truckload of eggs in an emergency doesn't seem important, but then we find out where it's going. That's a call to the Emergency Operations Center, where we all have a seat at the table, and that call will get to there, and we say, yeah, let that one through. But we're not out there. I guess we're like perceived as the bad guy, or I'm the bad guy in this room. But everybody wants to be out on the road. Everybody feels that their product or their agency is an emergency. They're enumerated in the directive. It sounds like there needs to be some changes. That's why we're here today, and we're glad that we were invited to the table to participate in this. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, sir.
A giant front end loader, and that would lead a caravan of 3 or 4 trucks. Could they do the shortcut with the front end loader in front, pushing the snow out of the way, and they get off the next ramp? So it saves a couple hours of road closed from trees down or whatever. Would that be allowed?
That would be based on the shift supervisor and PennDOT's determination out there as well. But a lot of times these road closures, you're not even going to get close. And a lot of times we have snowmobile clubs that come out and they go from car to car to check on people back in the queue. You would never get a front end loader past all the cars that are in the backlog. So you're going to have to take that other route. Now, if there's a way for you to get through there, we would most certainly try to make that happen. But I mean, you pull up to a trooper and and you're in an electric service truck, so we pretty much know, yeah, we need the electric restored.
Yeah.
And they're going to let you through if they can. But each situation is different in its own way, and if they can't let you through, they can't let you through, and you have to go around.
Let me point something out, because I think this conversation really drives home why we're here today, at least in my mind. Major and I talked about this before. What you're talking about 3 years ago, we didn't have a PBOC up and running. We didn't have this group. You didn't have Molly. You didn't have Melissa. You're going to see later a dashboard. You're going to see a way to share information. You didn't have that ability to say, hey, I have this problem, and get to the PSP and PennDOT and FEMA and the people that can make the decisions like that and make that work all in one room, all at the same time, with the conduit directly from you to the PBOC to those decision makers. You didn't have them. That's what we're trying to do here. That is exactly what we're trying to do here. The storms up in northeastern PA, where you guys were getting beat up really bad, that's how that got resolved, right? We talked about it in the EOC. We pushed it down to the local level. We had PennDOT, a troop of folks with chainsaws, and your guys all working together, all done out of the team. That's how we ended up those roads, one road by one road by one road, because that's what it took. But we were able to coordinate all of that because we were able to have all the folks in there. That, to me, is the power of this group. Is that the access? You have a picture. You have the picture of the EOC. Can you put that up for a second? I'm off. Way the hell off your script. I'm sorry.
I think so. Hang on. If not, I'll
This
get
is
it.
important. I think it's important. Anyhow,
No,
maybe not.
I'll get it.
We're working on it. That's it. I'm ahead of the meeting for the afternoon. We do. We have a dashboard. Right? We have a dashboard that Molly and Melissa help run. Molly will give you the dashboard. Here's what I wanted to show you. Here's what we did 3 years ago. Major has been there. This is the situation room. This is when all of these folks are talking about a major incident going on in Pennsylvania. These are the decision makers. This is PSP. This is the Utility Commission. This is PennDOT. This is Turnpike. This is rattle off a whole bunch of state agencies. That's who they are. Now, if you look down towards that far end on the left, two people back, not a really good picture, you're going to see that color hair. So that lady sitting there, Molly's at the table in her PBEOC role with the key decision makers in these situation executive meetings. That's where she is. Not stuck up in the corner. Not we'll talk to her when we get time. She's at the table. That's why this is so important. All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just to add to Jeff's point, being the PUC, our utilities, when we go to the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center, the first thing we do, our emergency team, is we notify our electric industry contacts, and we say, we're here. If you have unmet needs or priorities, or you need help with, to get something to the state police or a priority, I want everybody here to know that's always been our standard policy is for the utilities to be able to call us, too. So we're part of that room, too. That's
all right, so go ahead, Mom.
One of the key parts of the directive, and this is one of the things that makes us not quite there yet, is kind of understanding that if such a letter is used, how is that communicated to state police and troopers on the road? And then if it's used locally, how is that communicated to the local municipalities? Or if you have a specific issue like what you're describing, where do you go to start to have that coordination between the local and the state? And so the directive seeks to further define what a critical service is and who can use the letter without much challenge. But what it doesn't do yet, and it's something that we need to work through, is how does the coordination and communication happen when there is something going on and there is either a need for the state that needs to be addressed, or how can you have a level of confidence that the local municipalities are recognizing this letter on the roads that they're closing? And that's a gap that we currently have right now, and that's kind of one of the critical parts of what this directive is in time.
Hey, Tom, Molly.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in too. Again, what this provides is a formal mechanism for that process to occur. Up until that point, it was really done on a case-by-case basis, on an ad hoc basis. Somebody may have to call the EOC, and they deal with it on a one-on-one basis. It's not complete. It's not perfect. And I think technology implementation might really help to even advance it further. But clearly, Tom, what you brought up earlier is extremely important. It's only as good as the education of this goes out to the local police, to the state police, so that they are aware of its existence, recognize its limitations, and allow for its implementation as needed.
George, that's a great point. So I wanted to make sure that I just don't keep talking here, that we go through the directive. And I wanted to, especially for you, George, the suggestions you made, we took an awful lot of them. There were a couple of them that we couldn't. The one was a question about, this is dependent upon a proclamation of disaster emergency issued by the governor. And the reason that is in there is because that's where the legal authority lies. Right, that is through that proclamation process that the major talked about, that keys the extra, the ability to close those roads and to restrict those roads. So that is why that is still in there. And it also says these are for serious incidents. Right, these are for serious things that happen. So the commitment is clear. Major Patrol, PennDOT, FEMA. This is how we are going to operate on state-controlled highways, and that is defined in the directives. My friends at PennDOT are really good at defining them by 2-digit, 3-digit, 1-digit. That makes my head hurt, but it's in the directive. They know which ones it are. They are the ones that we absolutely can make sure this is implemented on, that you can have access when it's safe on those roads. And the commitment that you're going to get from us is that all of us will work with the local folks the most we can. You have, again, the Chief of Police Association here, us from Emergency Management, PennDOT with all the municipal folks, to try to make sure that the local folks also adopt this. So I'm screwing you up. Do you want to go through the directive?
No,
do you want to put it up so folks can ask questions? You have it loaded. I loaded it this morning on your desktop. Remember? You loaded 2 versions.
Oh, bingo.
Bingo.
Now, yeah. Give me just a second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Questions? Sure.
First, I really would like to just thank Molly and the group here that's done a fantastic job, honestly, in improving situational awareness. Our business, where I work for Boeing, heavily dependent on it. We operate in EOC, have an incident management team. Many of our decisions are based on the information that's being fed from the state and from FEMA and whatnot. So thank you very much for that. In reference to the authorization letter, you're talking about, who's going to recognize this letter. Maybe a good addition to it would be that what agency will recognize it. So across the state police would recognize it. But I also like that if there was some sort of section or a disclaimer that says encouragement of local coordination, or even an additional signature area for, I think you just said, the police chiefs, which probably encompasses a lot more than just your local agency, but represents multiple local agencies.
I think we can certainly modify the letter to encourage the local folks to adopt it and to recognize it. Again, we can speak for the state police because they've agreed.
Right.
PennDOT, Turnpike isn't here, but I think they've agreed. we can speak for those. We can absolutely encourage the other folks to do it. And like I said, Chief of Police Association is here. He's key. He's key to this for the local folks that do it.
Thank you.
So, go ahead. So this is the one that you're going to see marked up somewhat. Again, I'm thinking it's going to be guidance based on what I'm being told by our legal counsel. It will either be guidance or directive. In all honesty, that doesn't matter. What matters is that the groups that at the state level have agreed that they're going to follow. That's the framework for a lot of things like this. But I think maybe, I don't want to screw up your time, Tom. I think maybe instead of going word by word, if you would rather, here's my concern. So this is about honesty here, okay? I am concerned with sending this out to a whole lot of folks that I want you to read it and I want you to make comments on it. I would much rather do it through George and through a representative of this group, because what I don't want to do is see this in the newspaper, right? This is pre-decisional documents. These are documents that we're working on together that will become guidance. Once it's guidance, it'll be on our website. The whole world could see it. In its current form, it's our work, right? It's not ready for prime time. So it's about trust, right? So it is about, I'm certainly willing to talk to Pat and George about send it out, get more comments, get your group together. I think we've incorporated almost everything you've asked for in this. I think we've really tried to, maybe not the words, but get to those concepts, the things you wanted to accomplish. But if we haven't, plenty, Carrie. But if we haven't, you just need to tell us, right? And if we can change it, we'll change it. But again, not ready to see it on whatever the local news channel is, right? Or we still print newspapers anymore? One day a week, I think. Or print it in the newspaper. So, Matt, I'm going to look to you, and we'll give it back to you and George. And then if you guys would, we'll give it to you with all the comments, get back to us and let us know. I think we accomplished what you wanted. You wanted to make sure that we made it so that it became a framework that the locals could adopt very easily. You wanted to add more folks in the life safety arena. We did that, and we can add more if we need to. Just understand, once it becomes everybody, it really becomes nobody, right? It's sometimes less than that. And it sets up, I think, a pretty good way that we can start to get this a better place. So, Tom, you good?
One thing, I have up on screen, you can see where a lot of the changes were to be more inclusive, right? Yeah. Instead of just fuel, we can be a little more, a little more direct, right? Dave, from utility, can we include our contractors, right? That was added, right? Because utilities have labels on the trucks. What about the contractors don't have labels on the trucks, right? So we had to expand that. So this is part of what Pat and the committee are working on. I think that, they weren't given a copy of the documents yet. We're doing that through the work group, right?
Right. I would like to do it through the work group.
Okay, perfect.
The work group has given us stuff. We've tried to incorporate everything we can and kind of give you reasons why we can or can't do it. I'd like to work through the work group.
Okay, so that said, while we're here,
Thank you. Dave Hollinger from Drexel again, and I had a 30-plus year hiatus from the Commonwealth, but one of the stakeholders that I would think you might want to add that I didn't see up there might be the state fire commissioner, only because, and maybe the trooper or the chief can comment about this, but more likely your local fire policeman would be the one to close that access to the interstates. I know that again, one of the numbers of volunteer firemen and fire policemen, even though they're not law enforcement officers, they're called fire policemen, and a lot of times they're the ones that are closing these roads, and that, I think, that would be an important stakeholder to make sure. And again, maybe it's local police that are overseeing the fire policing, but in the past, it's been the volunteer fire companies.
That's a great point. We have a great relationship with police, so we'll absolutely do that.
So I put the email up there. If you want a seat at the table, I'll just be point blank on this issue. To get your brush on the canvas for the directive, you need to send an email to Molly, this address, right? RA-EMPMA X Affairs, goodness, at pa.gov, right? Okay. We will not be sending this out. We will be working with the committee. If you want to be on the committee, no charge. You just sign up. Is that straightforward enough? Okay, good. I want to underscore what Jeff just said. This is government trusting private sector, right? To make sure this is sensitive information and you honor that, right? Okay, so that's why we're not going to send it out, because we're now working together, if you will, in a trusted space. So we'll work that through the work group. That's the whole point of the work group, then the charter and so forth. So excellent. I jumped ahead to this.
Tom, if I can just weigh in on something.
Sure.
What this process allows, though, is this forum to weigh in on shaping public policy. I can't overemphasize the importance of that. If Giant Foods had a concern, or if UPMC Pinnacle had a concern, and they tried to inject their concern into a state policy, it would take forever. And it sometimes moves with glacial speed. So we have to recognize that this forum allows us as a group to weigh in as a private sector organization and help shape public policy.
Right. Yeah. And this is thank you, George. Most time policy is done by hiring a lobbyist, and they do their work and get the words changed. This is different. This is operational policy development, right? And you've got the agencies here, you've got the regulatory folks here, so they're watching, right, and advising, hopefully. If they see something that we're missing, let us know. But this is a way you can get it done very quickly and effectively for the right reasons, and in the space of trust, which is very important. Somebody had a hand up?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. And I think you kind of said this. I just want to make sure I'm grasping it okay. But in the governance of what you're doing on the private sector side, if we screw up, you're going to remove us from our access on the private sector side because we haven't been behaving properly in accordance to what the state has said. Maybe we violated it or violated it intentionally, whatever. But is there some directed action that the group will take in your charter?
Great. Not yet. But that's something we'll look to the work group to. All right, we're going to police it now. What's the process? We haven't gotten there yet.
You haven't got there. Okay, that's fair. But I think the state is doing the right thing in partnering and compelling us to work as a group to achieve a bigger result, a better cause, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have the accountability, and we need to manage ourselves properly. And if we're not, then there's a consequence to doing that. So.
And thank you. And one of the things I've learned working at the regional level with the Fleet Work Group, trust isn't built organization to organization. It's built me to you. It's built between people. And if you have a culture like that, it works wonderfully. You get so much done. So that's what they're trying to replicate here. And I think we have great leadership in government, which has to start that way to let that go. But we also have you folks that have been around, and we're replicating a model many of others have built. So I think we have a great opportunity. But this I've never seen before. I got to tell you, this is an exciting opportunity. So another comment, I thought. Okay.
Yeah, so just so you know, there is a method to the madness in terms of the email address, which the madness being IT, I can't explain. But the reason why, like, my email isn't up there, which is much easier if you know Gaelic, but is because this partnership is not based on any one person. And so whether I'm here, whether I'm not, whether Melissa's here, whether she's not, whether Jeff is, and there's a place where this communication can happen regardless of who's there. And you know that somebody that's involved with this partnership is getting it and taking care of it. And with that said, I would encourage you to, what really makes this a private sector-led, with government at the table opportunity is take advantage of that email and build the relationships, certainly with government, but build the relationships with each other. And that's how we'll have a true private sector led. And then that means we can get the feedback we need to make the policies that are relevant and meet the needs and the issues that you're trying to solve. So I encourage you to take advantage of this email. And if you have feedback or you just want to participate in that work group to hear the discussion and see maybe there is something relevant, I encourage you to do that. There is no right or wrong. There's no fee. Nobody's making any money off of this. It truly is building a better state of commerce and recovery for our community. So I encourage you to write it down and take advantage of it. Because we're certainly not going to say no.
So we're going to take a break for lunch. After that, we're going to show you a couple of technologies that Pennsylvania Emergency Management has put in place for you, right, for the private sector. A collaborative environment allows you to talk to each other during an event or not at an event. Some other things we're going to share information that we're pulling from weather, some new data, and then we're gonna have a couple of discussion points. So one comment about the email, private sector, send an email to that today and tell them you think this. If you think this is a good thing, let them know, because we need a lot of eyes to see not just that we met, but if it was valuable, if it was different, if it was unique. It's proof is what they need, right? Because there's a whole lot of time and resource yet to come, and we want to make sure we ignite that. So, Pat, I'm going to turn over to you. We'll break for lunch, okay?
All right, we're going to have a working lunch, so to speak, so you can certainly bring your lunch and beverages back in here. It's immediately outside, so please help yourself.
Okay. Those of you on the bridge, we're going to disconnect and then reconnect at 12:30.
Hey, Tom?
No, I mean, are we
Oh, yeah,
are we
yes.
recording the WebEx?
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, can I call you on your cell privately?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Everything going okay? Yeah, that's your actually worked out. I don't mind helping. Oh, thank you.
It's good. It's like a teacher room.